extensive background in this regard, and he has none.
Trump says that Georgia Republican Representative Doug Collins is among the candidates he is considering for the permanent role, but Collins says humbly he can't do it because he's running for the Senate. With Democrat Pete Buttigieg running as the first openly gay man to head a major presidential campaign, the historic moment has not been lost on his husband, the potential first gentleman of the United States. Chasten Buttigieg spoke to ABC.
I focus on going out there and showing people who I am. And I think we have an opportunity right now to beckon Americans to a higher calling and to welcome people onto the right side of history.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael, great to see you. Thank you, sir. Let's get to the market action, shall we? Equity futures are lower, down by 10 on the S&P 500. Negative around about 0.33%, recovering slowly as the session grows older. A similar story in the bond market. A big bid, we give it up a little bit. Yields are lower by 4 on a US 30-year. 192 is your yield.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. There's a new proposal from the NFL to add 2 more teams to the playoff format. The plan calls for 7 teams from each conference to make the postseason, and only the top seeds would receive byes. There's also a push to eliminate a preseason game and add a 17th regular season game in its place. The plan is under a proposed labor agreement now being reviewed by the owners and players. Golfer Rory McIlroy became the first top player to publicly reject the idea of a proposed new tour, saying he values his choice of where to play over whatever money the Premier Golf League is promising. McIlroy at the Mexico Championship said, "I would like to be on the right side of history on this one." McIlroy says if all the top players decided to join, he would rethink it, but he doesn't see that happening. The Premier Golf League would require 12 4-man teams to play 18 events. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Global. Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The moment you realise that radiator isn't warming up, it's chilly in London, and half the class are coming for a sleepover. The moment you realise you've got British Gas Home Care boiler cover from 46p a day, including parts and labour. So the moment you have a problem, make it our problem. And if you buy selected home care products online by the 24th of February, you'll get a gift card worth up to £75 to treat yourself. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in-store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Deere & Company up 6.4% in early trading after results that beat analyst estimates. It also kept its forecast for the year unchanged. Also watching Sprint up 5% this morning after it agreed to new terms with T-Mobile for their pending merger that take into account the deterioration in Sprint shares since the transaction was first agreed upon. T-Mobile's down 1.5%. U.S. stock index futures are falling with shares across most of Asia, while European stocks, they're drifting a bit now amid some renewed concern about the impact of the coronavirus after cases increased outside of China. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 8 points, Dow futures down 58, NASDAQ futures down 22. The DAX in Germany's up 0.1%. 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds, yield 1.48%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.37%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.7% or 92 cents at $52.96 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.1% or $17.30 at $16.37.80 an ounce. The euro 1.0799 against the dollar. British pound 1.2928, and the yen is at 112. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Thanks so much, Karen. I don't want to make him blush, but John Farrow changed the discussion in economics worldwide at Davos, where he tore apart Mr. Prince of Bridgewater over boom and bust. It became a 3-day fun-filled derby for us, talking about the dynamics of our economic system at the zero bound. We didn't know then we'd be near a record low on the 30-year yield. We didn't know then we'd be at near 1,700 on gold. We didn't know then there would, of course, be this tragedy of a virus in China. To make sense of it, with a really important Fed confab today in New York, is Julia Coronado of Macro Policy Perspectives, and you are perfect to talk to about the fear that's out there among public officials messaging, we are the world, happy, happy. Jim Bullard's over on the Death Star right now with Joe, Andrew, and Becky. Everything's fine. Baloney. It's a Bullard regime change. Clarida Galley-Gertler, 1999, The Science of Monetary Policy. What's the science in 2020?
Well, that's exactly what they're trying to figure out. I mean, it's a tricky communication challenge, especially at moments like this when there's a real threat to the outlook.
Okay, but the difference here is we're getting yeah from Clara to John. Who else have we talked to? Mike McKee's got Messler today.
We've heard from plenty of central bankers.
Well, because you don't want to be have your hair on fire as a central banker.
Okay, but you're allowed to have your hair on fire. Speak.
Well, I don't think that we know the extent to which this is. It is not contained. The virus is not contained. It's spread to Korea. It's definitely causing damage in Japan. So we don't yet know when it's going to stabilize. There are projections that it'll stabilize by the end of the quarter.
We're doing this at the zero bound.
We're very close.
What is the optionality these bankers have that affects every one of our listeners?
Right. So I think it's an interesting time to have this conversation because on the one hand, we know that the monetary policy officials are running out of tools. On the other hand, what we saw last year was that they can have a powerful impact with a few rate cuts, right? A few rate cuts, a little turn in the balance sheet, and all of a sudden the sentiment switched pretty hard. And the housing market responded, commercial real estate responded. So there is some ammo left. They did keep the train on the tracks last year. But if the shock is big enough, obviously, you hit the zero lower bound pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you here in the United States. That's the story. In Germany, it's not.
No.
On the brink of contracting. In Japan, we're already there on the brink of recession.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the other two biggest economies in the world, the number 3 and 4.
Right.
We could have them in recession by the middle of this year, couldn't we, Julia?
We could. And the question then is it a recession that is sort of technical in nature in the sense that we've already stabilized the virus and we know everything's on its way back? That would be less worrisome than if there is sort of knock-on effects to sentiment and that's spilling over into services and consumer spending.
Yeah, and I think this is key for the market. For this bull market to finish, a whole range of things can happen, but two of them that stand out to me, either we lose faith in the ability and willingness of central bankers to act, Mohammed Al-Arab has made that point very well over the last couple of weeks, or we start to see that tension, that weakness in manufacturing appear in services, damage the consumer, hit the labour market, then we got a problem in America. How far are we from even thinking about that scenario?
Well, we've been pretty far. I mean, it's been actually a little worrisome that markets haven't been reactive to information that suggests risks, right? We've had almost no pricing of risk. So that means we have further to fall if, in fact, there is a materialization that's meaningful.
Well, and that's exactly where I wanted to go. Sort of this tension, is there too much complacency? We were talking earlier about this question. We've got the yield curve, the 2-10s yield curve, at the narrowest level since late last year, almost inverting yet again. And yet you have borrowing costs for the top-rated companies at record lows.
Right.
What will another Fed rate cut do to stimulate the economy, given how low borrowing costs already are and the fact that asset prices are already so high?
Right. Again, and I think that highlights, like, there was a little bit of ammo last year. They used it to address that worry middle of the year. Now, if we have that same worry return, you have less ammunition. And I do think there's a lot of complacency in market pricing right now.
Julia, I'm going to go to a line from Clara to Gally Gertler 21 years ago. It is then possible to represent the baseline model in terms of the IS curve, the real economy curve, that relates the output gap to the real interest rate. There isn't a real interest rate. They wrote this paper when it was unimaginable. We'd have negative rates.
We are where we are.
This
it's
stuff,
not that is not a roadmap anymore.
and
so we need new tools. We need new
Where
tools.
are the new tools?
So I think it's been, to me, a little bit disappointing that in this policy review, that the Fed hasn't sort of endeavored to think a little bit more outside the box. Is $1 trillion, let me help, is $1 trillion deficit outside the box enough? Well, I mean, the deficit may need to expand more if we get hit with a real shock.
John, is a policy tool Dow 32,000?
Look, financial conditions matter, and the Fed responded to them quickly. I think what the Fed really responded to, though, in December 18, was what happened in the credit market.
Yes.
When the primary market just shut down for high yield. We don't see that.
They always take credit as a much more material signal than the equity market fluctuation. So I think you're exactly right. In December, there was nothing trading in credit markets. And that was a very meaningful signal for the Fed, and they responded.
What do you do when you have limited ammunition? You look to Japan. They're experiencing it right now. It's yield curve control right now. Isn't that the next stop for this Federal Reserve beyond QE?
Well, they're already talking about yield curve control, so yes. But I think there are other ideas out there in the economics world, like automatic stabilizers, some kind of fiscal monetary coordination, where you actually get to the problem, which is lack of demand. The transmission through financial markets is getting less and less powerful as we go on. As everybody knows that rates are going to stay low, they don't need to respond to every wiggle in rates, right? So you get less of a delta into housing, into durable consumer spending. What you need is direct cash to consumers.
Julia,
is that what you're recommending?
Yes.
Can you make it happen tonight?
Can we start writing some checks? Julia, great to see you.
Yes.
That was brilliant.
Leaving it on a really important note that maybe the direct-to-consumer checks are going to start.
I mean, honestly, though, if the Fed's getting their cues from credit markets are saying, we're great. We're in great shape.
Yeah, financial conditions are loose.
Period.
It's that weird tug of war. Financial conditions are loose because they think the Fed might move. The Fed won't move because financial conditions are loose. That's the dilemma we're in right now. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seized...
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status, phase, policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Peoples of London, don't be like Sergei, slaving Monday to Friday, then so frazzled by weekend, cook Sunday lunch. You need me, Alexander, to save the day.
Oh, so Sunday lunch means meerkat meals?
Exactly. Get 2 for 1 on food with meerkat meals at your local favorites, like the Schoolhouse, when you buy through Compare the Market.
Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
The rules say you can't have a big 4x4 SUV that combines power with fuel efficiency. But the new Vauxhall Grandland X Hybrid 4 breaks all the rules. The smart petrol-electric hybrid engine combines 300 horsepower with up to 204 mpg. That's right, 204. Search Grandland X Hybrid and test drive now at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Official WLTP Grandland X Hybrid 4 test figures. For comparison purposes only, obtained using combined battery power and fuel. Real-world figures may vary.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
First time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. The American dream is to get through February. We welcome all of you on a Friday, a busy Friday, nuanced Friday, and then into the weekend with a lot of thought. The Nevada caucus is on Saturday as well. On to that debate on Tuesday in Charleston. John Farrow, Lisa Bramwitz, and Tom Keene, we welcome all of you into our little family here. Good morning, Boston, Washington, New York. Good morning, Sirius XM, Channel 119. Lots of people emailing. Muhammad emailed in.
What did he say?
He said he was listening and liked hearing from Mr. Cosenzi earlier.
Very cool.
Others emailing in with their comments as well. Julia Coronado, I thought, was just brilliant.
She's fantastic. That'll be on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll lead that with the podcast, we hope. Thank you so much on the podcast. We are humbled at, approaching 1 million downloads a month. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. It's like looking at Dow 30,000. Like, you're almost there. Anyways, lots of good. John, what do you see here? But just flesh out. Look at the 30-year bond, and we've got some oomph here to a lower yield in the last 10 minutes.
Yield's breaking down by 4 basis points on a 30-year, so the long end outperforming the front end a little bit. Your 30-year yield right now, 192. That spread, the distance between 2s and 10s, Tom, down to 11 basis points.
Yeah, Lisa, again, the same oomph. Gold up $20 now, $16.41 an ounce. I'm sorry, it's early, but I'm on the 1700 watch.
And I want to go into what Julia Coronado is saying, which is, when are we going to actually reach that breaking point? Because there still is complacency in the market.
Yeah.
When are we going to actually tip into capitulation? We're not there yet. yet, but we're getting on the precipice as people talk more about pandemic.
And Timos Fiatakis earlier with Glen Point over in London was really good that we haven't had, just as you say, Lisa, that catharsis yet. That like that everything's been don't you think, John? You should go into the production of The Real Yield tonight at 1 p.m. Isn't it been like
tonight?
It's sort of been like Leicester. It's just sort of a grinding.
Look, there's a huge faith in the V-shaped recovery. To make it very simple,
well
just
said.
the idea that as the year grows older, the outlook gets better, and we'll leave a lot of this behind. Most of the economists on Wall Street say. That's the consensus view.
Bruce Kasman at J.P. Morgan, that's what he wrote.
That's the base case, and the base case is captured by financial markets, and that's what you see in the price action of the last month.
Am I looking at a V-shaped screen right now? I don't think
there's no down.
There's no correction.
No V.
We have no correction in the market. There's just the expectation in the economy that you will have a deep drop in the economic data, followed by a steep recovery in the coming months.
One of the great bias we have is towards broader strategists that have had the courage to go narrow in their earlier career. Mr. Leibovitz of J.P. Morgan Asset Management, John, has done that. He had the charm of really focusing on small and mid-cap equities at one point, which is way different than saying, we have a buy on Apple.
Should bring him in now. David Leibovitz, J.P. Morgan Asset Management.
We're long Amazon.
Market strategist. David, there's parts of this
it.
market where a lot of people are focused, and the big caps, I think, is where most people are looking at the moment, where we've bid up some of these massive names. The Economist, the front cover for this weekend is just some robotic bulls with the logos of Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and the headline, Big Tech's $2 trillion bull run. And of course, the Bears said, this is the moment. That front page, this is the moment. Why is it not the moment?
So I think a couple of things. First of all, when everybody tells you it's the moment, it's very rarely the moment. So I would just start with that as a disclaimer. In addition to that, we see a lot of differences today in the makeup of the tech sector, particularly from a fundamental standpoint relative to what we saw during the tech bubble in the late 90s. And I think perhaps the most important thing is just when you look at the relationship between market capitalization and contribution to overall earnings growth, it's much more balanced today than it was during the tech bubble. I mean, during the tech bubble, these companies had no earnings. You were buying an idea. Today, those earnings are coming through a little bit more. But what I would say is, what gives me a little bit of pause is a lot of these big tech names, right? They're the ones that are keeping the rest of the tech sector afloat. If you think about the way that when one of these big tech firms spends money, that trickles down into the broader tech sector. And coming back and wearing my small and mid-cap analyst hat, if something happens to these big names, they're not necessarily going to bear the full brunt of that. It's going to be the smaller names that they've been keeping afloat through their various spending.
What's fascinating, though, David, is the amount of people that use this term secular growth story. I want to be in the secular growth stories. Some of these companies aren't old enough to ever had a cyclical test, yet we have this faith that they are the secular growth story. They are almost the havens. I say. I remember when a guest came on my program and said that Amazon was a haven. Is that how some people are treating this? Just queuing off low rates, low yields, looking at some of these big secular growth stories and bidding up software?
I think that that's a big part of it. And, when we look at the direction of travel, and I'm sympathetic to the secular argument, you look at the labor market, you look at the increasing use of automation that clearly benefits the tech sector more than it benefits other parts. That said, I think that it's important not to get ahead of ourselves. And one of the things that's happening in tech more broadly, right, if we zoom out away from the public markets and think about what's happening on the private side of the equation, you're seeing a lot of VC to PE deals. You're seeing a lot of sponsor to sponsor deals. They don't really care about the earnings. All they care about is the revenue. Really? And that makes me a little bit uncomfortable about the long run trajectory.
Let me look at you from VC to VC.
I want to flip what you're saying on its head, which is what you were saying is the gains in big tech might mask the vulnerability of smaller tech companies, but it might also mask the underperformance of other companies within the entire rest of the U.S. economy as well. And I'm struck by this figure that John Authors put out that if you exclude the big five, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Alphabet, and Amazon, U.S. earnings were down significantly in the fourth quarter. If you look at the Russell 2000, it's continuing to underperform the S&P 500. Is the rally, the $2 trillion rally in big tech, masking some serious underlying weakness?
I think it absolutely is. And one of our big concerns looking ahead at 2020 is actually how the earnings story plays out. If you look at the 11 GICS sectors today, there are only 4 of them that are seeing margins expand, right? Financial saw margins expand in the fourth quarter because of a favorable base effect. Staples are seeing their margins expand. Utilities are seeing their margins expand. And then tech is seeing its margins expand. The rest of the market is seeing profits come under a pretty significant amount of pressure, yet you still have consensus looking for 8 to 9% earnings growth in 2020, which I just can't square that circle.
What are your clients doing? I mean, part of your job is to go out and talk to the troops, and by that I mean the clients. We do the backdrop here, the Morgan Stanley E-Trade, and you're talking to more substantial people at JP Morgan. Great. What are they actually doing with their money besides telling you they need more Apple?
So I think what's most interesting, the most interesting trend that we've seen over the past couple of quarters is primarily a phenomenon in the institutional world, so pensions, endowments, foundations. And what we're seeing a lot of folks do is look at the world today, look at their portfolios, not necessarily be keen to add more equity beta to their overall allocation, but they look at fixed income and they're not getting paid to own bonds
They're not making their actual assumption, and their assumption's going down right now. They're under, and John, this goes back to Jeff Yu and the wall of money out there at UBS. These people are desperate at their actuarial underperformance. Plus, Bruce Kasman and Michael Feroli are going to tell them the actuarial assumption's coming down as well. That pressure's immense, isn't it?
Exactly, it is. And so what we're seeing a lot of people do, because again, adding high yield to get that income is just going to increase your overall sensitivity to equities. So we're seeing more and more people adopt things like real estate and infrastructure and transportation strategies as a source of both diversification and yield within portfolios. The flip side of that is when I talk to a lot of retail clients, everybody feels pretty good. Market was up 30% last year. Nobody really seems to remember what happened in December of 18. Yet coming back to the profit story, we're seeing earnings begin to dry up.
This is brilliant, folks, what you're hearing there from Julia Coronado back-to-back with David Leibowitz is just outstanding. Okay, great. Is Apple, Amazon, and the others, John, on the cover of The Economist this week, are they under-owned by institutions?
I think that they are probably not under-owned by institutions, because more and more institutions that I speak with are indexing their large cap public equity exposure. I mean, it's very difficult to add alpha in that market. I mean, there are north of 20 analysts that cover Apple. There's no stone that goes left unturned.
He's mentioned 3 Greek letters. Can he stay?
He can stay for as long as he likes. Pain trader last year, equity markets just kept going higher.
Exactly.
Despite all the outflows, equity markets kept going higher, and the biggest risk wasn't a downside risk, it was upside risk. And the calls you needed to get right, the policy call and the call on multiples.
Yep.
Is 2020 any different?
I don't think it is. I think that one of the things that's been supporting this market as of late is an idea that A, the coronavirus issue is in fact transitory, and B, whoever ends up in the White House this fall, when we look at governments more broadly around the world, the fiscal taps are staying open. So if there's no inflation, policy remains accommodative on the monetary side, and if the fiscal taps continue to flow, that's a pretty good environment for equity markets overall.
Tom, you asked if institutions under-own big tech. I was struck by a Wall Street Journal story yesterday about Warren Buffett's Apple stake, and it's more than doubled to $79 billion since he began buying in 2016. He basically capitulated. He still can't put any of his money to work, but he said, I didn't go into Apple because it was a tech stock, but rather for its brand and capital return strategy. They have so much cash, they can just keep pouring it into investors' hands.
So is that the underpinning here? I mean, it used to be in small cap and mid cap where there was no share buyback, no dividend growth. Is that the mother of all underpinnings here in 2020, the use of cash that Lisa alludes to?
I think it is. We actually just released a paper last Friday on how corporations have been using cash and thinking about investment spending versus R&D versus dividends versus buybacks. And the way that we're really informing ourselves and driving our own strategies this year is by focusing on this concept of total shareholder yield. So dividends plus buybacks, right? Everybody always wants to know, what do you like more, value or growth? Frankly, I think you can own both. The financial sector pays a 6.5% total shareholder yield. Tech is paying you a 4% total shareholder yield, and you don't have that downside risk if rates do move higher that you're getting from utilities and staples.
John from Coventry emails in and says, what should I do with Uber? That's,
Oh, is that what he said? Is that what he said? We won't get a response.
Real estate.
David, great to catch up with you.
It was
Country
brilliant.
real estate.
Thanks for having me, guys.
David Leibowitz, JP Morgan Asset Management, Global Market Strategy.
Julia Coronado, David Leibowitz back-to-back.
Jonathan Femby too.
And John Femby.
Absolutely brilliant.
All on podcast coming up.
a little bit later today. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide, shall we, from New York. We do that with Michael Barr. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, John. Lisa, Tom. Intelligence officials have warned lawmakers that Russia is interfering in the 2020 election campaign to help President Trump get reelected. That's according to several media outlets, including the New York Times and Washington Post. A senior administration official said it infuriated Trump, who complained that Democrats would use the information against him. Former Vice President Joe Biden says he is not big on caucuses. Biden spoke at a CNN town hall event last night in Las Vegas ahead of Saturday's Nevada caucuses.
It's not that I think anybody's trying to do anything wrong. It's just really a complicated system. One of those iPads breaks down, things change a lot. And so I'm hoping you all decide to go to a primary next time.
Biden also says he will not run for a second term if he's not healthy enough to do the job of president. A church has become the biggest cluster of viral infections in South Korea. A total of 152 cases of the coronavirus have been found in the southeast city of Daegu and nearby areas since Wednesday. Meanwhile, it was supposed to be a cruise to celebrate his retirement. Instead, a Utah man is pleading for help after being taken to a Japanese hospital more than a week ago after testing positive for the coronavirus while on the Diamond Princess cruise. Since then, John Herring says he's received no contact with the U.S. Embassy or the cruise line for information on getting home.
And I just got very concerned and scared that the fact that I'm here in this hospital and no one seems to care if something happened to me. I don't know when my wife would be notified.
His wife traveled back to the U.S. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, 1 hour, 17 minutes away from the opening bell. Here's your price action in the stock market. The S&P 500 down by 10, a negative 1/3 of 1%. In the bond market, Treasuries drifting lower, down by 4 basis points. On 30 years, your yield, 1.918%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential conversation.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For something for everyone. Carpet Right. For life.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns.
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
It's 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. 8:17 on Wall Street. Futures are lower this morning. Let's go to the first word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Karen. U.S. futures remain under pressure since the last time we spoke. Dow futures down 85 points. S&P's dropped 10, and NASDAQ futures declined by 28. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.48%. Gold is now trending higher by 20 points. And Shanghai rose 0.3% overnight, while European markets are off their session lows and are now trading mixed. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 9:45, market U.S. manufacturing PMI, and at 10 o'clock, existing home sales. After the Bellus night first solar missed estimates, shares are down 11% in the pre-market, and Dropbox beat estimates, shares are up 12% in the pre-market. Regarding earnings this morning, Deere revenue beat estimates, and in other news, Square's price target raised to $99 at Citigroup, while Domino's Pizza price target raised to $3.75 from $2.80 over at UBS. Wrapping things up, L Brands was raised to outperform at Evercore ISI. CF Industries raised to overweight at JP Morgan, and Domino's Pizza cut to hold over at Stifel. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. Here's what you need to know in the last 20 minutes. We have seen a tape deterioration. John, let's be quick here to get to our important guest. 30-year bond, we're all on the watch, and it's actually been resilient for an hour or two. And then, John, it just gave way.
30-year yield just drifting lower, and the levels you need to look out for on a 30-year yield in America is a level that we were back to at the end of August last year, Tom. We're just south of 192 now. The all-time low, 190.39 at the end of August.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, also gold 19, up 20, up 22, now up $24, $16.44 the ounce. A good backdrop, all this correlation. To speak to Timos Fiatakis, of course, for years with Goldman Sachs and UBS, now holding court. He went over to the dark side. He's at Glen Point Capital in London. We greatly appreciate his attendance as well. Tell us about the correlations in the market now, Timos. How tight are correlations into the weekend?
I think that the market is trading two themes, and it's trading them very tightly across all assets. So in that sense, the market is easy to explain from a correlation standpoint. The one theme is the assessment of the growth damage from the Chinese shutdown, lockdown of the economy, and whatever else measure may come from the spread of the coronavirus. Again, not the virus itself, but more importantly, the policy fallout. And that has been something that stocks have been trying to grapple with. Some stocks that are cyclical have been pricing it as a straight line. Some other stocks, which are not directly affected, they're trying to find their way around pricing some risk premium and somewhat larger risk premium. So that's the one theme. And the other big theme is the policy easing that comes with it, which is driving the real yields lower, the gold up, and the fact that the Fed is a lot more optimistic than other central banks is driving the dollar up as well. So that's the landscape, basically, the lay of the land. respect to correlation.
And Lisa, Turkish lira now out to a 6.12, and Brazilian real with goofy prints in the early morning 4.40. We're recalibrating an EM as well.
Yeah, although still not necessarily getting to that capitulation point. And Themos, I wanted to ask, when you look at the actual trading volumes, which had until yesterday been declining pretty significantly, and you look at sort of the drift higher or the drift lower on any given slew of headlines, do you get the feeling that confidence is eroding about the complacency that's set into markets, that we're getting close to that capitulation tipping point?
Look, I mean, there's a number of technical factors in the markets, and today's session is critical, right? We need to see what the session will bring today, because, you know, a lot of these technical questions that you're asking about capitulation will find a very important inflection point today. Beyond that, for the things that you're mentioning, I think it's very important to understand that what has not fueled but supported the extension of some of these trends has been the fact that the policymakers, like they've done in a number of recent slowdowns since 2008, they've welcomed those moves. They've welcomed weaker currencies. You know, the pace they've resisted, but the direction they've welcomed. So the market is trying to explore, even in a low volume, even in a orderly way, it's trying to explore exactly how much easing in financial condition is desirable from the policymaker.
Themos, I want to talk about dollar yen. We've moved 2-3 figures in a week alone. I'll ask 3 different people what's driving it. I'll get 3 different reasons. What on earth is going on with the Japanese yen this week?
Look, I think that it has been a very unique week because a lot of people are looking at the yen as a function of US 10-year rates, which is one of the expressions of the yen. But at the same time, what has been going on has been that the dollar has been strengthening and Japanese data have been awful. So it has been bouncing between its role as a reflection of relative monetary policy between the U.S. and a curve that doesn't really move, and also the fact that local economy is deteriorating, the dollar has been strong. Having said that, what we're missing in this conversation is that we haven't had a risk-off. We haven't had a proper risk-off. The real correlation between the 10-year and the yen will be or could be tested at the point that there's a major risk-off. That's when the yen becomes the safe.
Okay, come on, cut to the chase. You're with Glenn Point now. What's your yen level on a real risk-off?
I mean, in a real risk-off, I think that, again, in a scenario where we sell off big, I think that you first go to 100, and then you see the desire of the policymaker to tolerate a move in the 90s.
Okay, Themos, these are really important stories. These are the funding currencies. In a period of risk aversion, we'd expect to see them bid up. The Japanese yen, you're calling for 100 in a true risk-off environment. Where does that leave the euro, which over the last few years increasingly has also been used as a funding currency? Does it break down, continue to break down in a risk-off scenario, or do we see it start to break the other way?
The main question for the euro is when it becomes the new yen. Right, with the policy very close, as the European Central Bank has said, not there, but close to the point that it has reached its limits, then basically there comes a point that the market is trading the euro as the reflection of everyone else, as opposed to to the own inherent weakness of the European economy. So far, it has mirrored the dollar, it has rightly done so, but it has also been a funding currency for a number of emerging markets and a number of corporates, and that has basically come at a time where reduced export demand has reduced some of the hedging flows for exporters, right? But if there's a real sort of like kind of a risk off, I think there's a very good chance that we see a squeeze in the euro.
Not enough time. Themos, don't be a stranger. Themos Theotakis with us with some real important calls. Lisa?
One thing that's interesting to me is what's going to change the narrative from buy the dip to keep selling. We have not seen that, right? When we talk about capitulation.
When it moves.
Right, but what moves the needle so much?
Those calls on the yen and the euro, really, really
stunning.
important.
We'll talk about that.
Really important.
It can be one thing you need to know. We'll do that next.
Tomorrow.
And
the day after. I'm off Monday and Tuesday.
I'm not coming on Saturday.
You're off Monday or Tuesday? Really?
Hey,
y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer. And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on a Bloomberg Radio, 8:30 Eastern in 1 hour and 15 minutes. Your economic indicator, the market US manufacturing PMI services and
PMI-a-thon
will be coming out. It's PMI day.
Sounds
worldwide.
awesome.
China PMI is coming out early next week.
When did this start?
Really important.
I mean, like 20 years ago, we weren't doing this.
Soft data has been massively important for a long time, Tom. It's become increasingly important over the last couple of months as we try and get our hands around the fallout in China.
Can we explain it? 0 to 100, 50 is the midpoint.
Yeah.
And is it just as a general rule, above 50 is thumb up, below 50 is thumb down?
Above 50 is expansion, below 50 is contraction. What's interesting about them, though, is there's all these little sub-indices to get your hands around new orders, new export orders, employment, prices paid, delivery times.
Choose your own adventure.
Some really interesting data there to get your hands around what is actually happening in the economy.
We've got just an incredibly busy day in economics, and in New York it is a celebration of the smartest confab going. With us, Michael McKee, who does all the things economics worldwide here today. We're going to get to Philip Lanier. John is acutely acutely interested in your interview with Mr. Lane of the ECB as well. But Mike McKee, you know, I look now at this confab today, and it just seems way more important than it usually is.
Well, the Chicago Booth School puts on a conference every year, one-day conference, oddly in New York rather than in Chicago. But it's all about central banking, and basically all of the country's and Wall Street's biggest name economists and most of the Federal Reserve, and as we saw with Philip Lane, many central bankers from around the world attend.
And John, what's so important about this is it's sort of the we've run out of ideas conference. And that's why Mr. Lane is so original.
Yeah, what ammunition do they have left, especially at a time when we're worried about a growth scare in China? So I think the coronavirus is the focus for central bankers worldwide at the end of the day. Let's take a listen to what ECB Chief Economist Philip Lane had to say.
Like everyone else, I think the base case is a V-shape. So, I mean, number one is let's see how quickly the spread of the virus is contained. The sooner that happens, then the more confidence that this would be indeed something that is mostly in quarter one, maybe spilling over into quarter two. But, you know, from our perspective, I mean, our main focus is on the year end, going into next year and the year after. So for us as monetary policymakers, if this is indeed contained, even if there is a hit in terms of the initial weeks of 2020, if the recovery happens as we expect, then in terms of the medium-term policy challenge, it remains something that is not going to change our base case. But it's definitely a downside risk until we see the containment, until we see the recovery after that. We have to keep a close eye.
Well, one of the big issues is this could be a supply chain disruption. Monetary policy can't fix that. So what are the odds that the ECB would take any action?
Well, this goes back to, again, any supply chain disruption, if it's a matter of weeks, doesn't change the medium-term path for the economy. So really, we think the main mechanism, by the way, is obviously through Chinese demand. With lower spending in China because of what has been necessary to contain the virus, obviously spending levels in China are different than they would have been. The supply chain scenario does exist. We're tracking it, we look at it, but so long as these are delays in delivery of goods, so long as these remain temporary in nature, then it's not a dramatic issue for the medium-term horizon.
ECB Chief Economist Philip Lane there, sitting down with Michael McKee. Lucky to have Mike with us in the studio here in New York. Back at the end of 2018, Mike, President Mario Draghi, former President Mario Draghi, was talking about things being temporary, transitory, and then in 2019 they had to cut rates and restart QE. Why is this so different? Why is this economic situation we face right now so different to what we faced 18 months or so ago?
Investors have been basically trading on patterns, and the pattern has been that we get an event that scares people, it lasts for a few weeks, it goes away. So you buy the dip, and that seems to be the prevailing psychology on Wall Street. We're into our fourth week now, or fifth week now of the coronavirus, and we wake up to headlines today saying, oh, no, wait, it's worse. And so now we're starting to see maybe some concern that this is a blacker swan than people had thought. It's hard to know, and as Philip was saying, it's very hard for economists and central bankers to get their hands around what it actually means. And it's not really showing up in the data yet. The only data we've seen that had a major, that has shown it is you look at something like the German PMIs, which you were talking about, the sub-indexes, supplier delivery times. They get longer usually when demand is high.
Yeah.
In this case, they're getting longer because the supplies aren't coming in from China to build the things that the Germans are selling to other people. And so there is a sign that something is coming, but it's not there yet.
It's a crazy quirk of the data because as the delivery times lengthen, the sub-index drops below 50, then they invert it as they compute it into the headline number. So you get this boost to German manufacturing PMI, that seems to be largely from supply-side constraints. And this is the problem going forward, Mike. When do we actually start to get our hands around the data? When do we know what is actually going on?
This is about the time. We're going to start to get trade data coming in, and we'll see some impacts, particularly we'll look at the Asian trade data that comes in, South Korea, Thailand, places like that, which are deeply integrated into the Chinese supply chains. If they show some real damage, then you can expect it only to spread.
Data in Japan looks terrible. Recession looks odds on, and some of this has been self-harm, and now the Chinese story is just going to make it worse, isn't it?
It's bad for them because not only do they have the supply chain issues, but Japan is the biggest destination for Chinese tourists. And so probably the only place worse off in that sense is Macau, with all the casinos closed. The Japanese are definitely going to be hurt by this.
Michael, this thing in New York at the Intercontinental today is a huge celebration of academic thought. And I'm going to go back to Yellen 2016 on toolkit, past, present, and future. Not only can we not count the tools in the toolkit or not figure out how to use the tools in the toolkit, I don't think there's a confidence in the tools right now. What tools are in the toolkit for all these fancy economists?
Well, it depends on which central bank you're talking about, but for the Federal Reserve, they're basically focused on QE and forward guidance, and they're more focused on forward guidance than anything else. At this point, the idea is that you do buy things, buy more bonds in QE, but the announcement effect is gone, the surprise effect is gone. Yeah. And you've got a 10-year sitting at 1.5% roughly, so you're not going to get a lot of bang for that buck. So
well, let's be speculative here. We can do that on a Friday, Michael. 1.9175 on a 30-year bond. John, how negative is that real yield? Speaking of your 1 p.m. show today.
Well, inflation core, where is it now? Just north of 2%.
Yep.
So
it depends on which deflator you use.
Agreed.
You can use two. So you are looking at a negative real rate for 30 years.
In Lyle Brainerd's world, in Richard Claridis' world, in Professor Lane's world, can anybody use any of these models with a negative real yield? I don't see any of that in the literature.
It makes it more difficult. That's why they're looking at one of the things that's in the back pocket of the Fed is yield curve control. I know you've talked about that before. The idea that you say you're just going to buy X number of bonds of a certain tenor, and you're going to say here's the price instead of going out and buying it in the open market, and then that caps a yield. That's one idea they could do. The Fed has ruled out negative rates. The ECB
Have they ruled out stocks? So they're going to start buying Apple to make Pharaoh happy?
The Federal Reserve cannot buy stocks legally.
Really? In writing? They can't be the Swiss National Bank?
They cannot.
Yes. I didn't know that.
And there is a legal question about whether the Fed could even do negative rates legally if they wanted to, but they say they don't want to.
Meanwhile, there's a balance of risk here. On one hand, you have financial assets which are near record highs, near record high valuations. You've got corporate bond yields falling to record lows. And so people say financial conditions are easy. We don't need another rate cut. We don't need more stimulus. On the other hand, you're seeing the lowest income earners finally seeing the gains in this cycle, the economic cycle. And there's a fear of stymieing that since it takes so long to get that going. Which is a more important factor for the Fed to look at right now?
Well, probably I'd throw in the third factor is what would do any good in either case. I mean, the Fed has obviously made the decision to let the economy run to try to benefit people. For Wall Street, every problem can be solved by the central bank. It rained last Thursday, they should cut rates. Cutting rates isn't going to help if you have a supply chain problem because the Fed is set up to increase demand, not supply. So they lean towards doing nothing because there isn't a lot they can do.
Although you would say at this point in the credit cycle, we're actually starting to see consumer debt pick up. You're starting to see Morgan Stanley with their move or Goldman Sachs push into consumer lending as the next spot of profitability. Could there be a theory that finally, as a greater proportion of the United States gains more confidence, goes out and borrows, it sort of reignites the economic cycle? Is anyone talking about that?
Sure. There's a lot of people, and the more optimistic of the economists are saying, we had a dip. We had not an end of the economic cycle, but a sort of reset. And also, sort of in the way you have a correction in the financial markets, the economic cycle corrected with all the recession fears last summer, and now we're starting anew. Hard to measure that because the numbers aren't really supporting it except for the job growth numbers, but we're not seeing a dip either. So at this point, the one thing I would say is our Matt Bosler, whom you all know and love here, put together a great chart yesterday, added up household and business debt, and it is not expanding at the same pace it did in previous cycles.
Mike, I don't care. Bruins Stanley Cup bound?
I would hate to make a prediction.
But with surveillance on a Friday, go ahead.
Well, here's the problem, Tom. You know as well as I do that they're in line to win the President's Trophy, which means they have the best record in the league at the end of the season. And everybody who wins the President's Trophy loses the Stanley Cup. So at this point,
that's true.
You got to hope they fall back just a little bit.
Okay, we had to do that to balance out the football talk earlier. That's English. That's soccer talk. Folks, with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. President Trump says he does believe longtime friend and ally Roger Stone will be exonerated. Stone was sentenced yesterday to more than 3 years in federal prison and fined $20,000 for witness tampering and lying to Congress at an event in Las Vegas to celebrate prisoner reform. President Trump says many of his associates, like Stone, have been treated unfairly by the justice system.
But it happened to Roger Stone, and it happened to General Flynn, and it happened to, I won't name names, it happened to a lot of people and destroyed a lot of people's lives. And I'm here to make a fair system again.
Speaking at a CNN town hall last night in Las Vegas, former Vice President Joe Biden says he has no doubt on what will happen to Roger Stone.
Guarantee you, he's going to be pardoned. Guarantee. What's that message about? Don't worry. Do anything illegal for me and you're okay. I will pardon you.
Georgia Republican Representative Doug Collins says he wouldn't accept President Trump's nomination for Director of National Intelligence as he is running for the Senate. Collins says, though, it's humbling that the president would consider him. A federal judge is considering whether a salvage firm can recover an important piece of Titanic history. Court-recognized salvage firm RMS Titanic is asking a court in Virginia to recover the Marconi wireless telegraph machine that transmitted the ship's final distress calls. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. That is the news. Let's get you some price action. The 30-year yield, 1 basis point away from an all-time low. Your record low, 190.39. Right now, 1.912%. From New York this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Home ownership among Latinos is growing.
Latinos have historically, at least for the last couple decades, been very passionate about home ownership.
Gary Acosta is co-founder and CEO of NARUP, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals.
If you know Hispanic culture at all, you know that family is very central to the culture itself. And so the home plays a very critical role in all of that. So the aspiration for home ownership is strong.
And Acosta calls gains in Latino home ownership remarkable.
Coming out of the housing crash, obviously there was, work to be done to kind of rebuild the industry and rebuild the consumer confidence around home ownership and all of that. But the Latino community has proven to be very resilient in that regard and has increased its home ownership rate for 5 consecutive years.
In the next Real Estate Report, we'll take a look at the growing demand among Latinos for homes designed for multi-generational families and why builders aren't building more. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Connecting decision makers to a...
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase, policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The rules say you can't have a big 4x4 SUV that combines power with fuel efficiency. But the new Vauxhall Grandland X Hybrid 4 breaks all the rules. The smart petrol-electric hybrid engine combines 300 horsepower with up to 204 mpg. That's right, 204. Search Grandland X Hybrid and test drive now at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Official WLTP Grandland X Hybrid 4 test figures. For comparison purposes only, obtained using combined battery power and fuel. Real-world figures may vary.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Deere & Company up 7% this morning after results that beat estimates, and Capter had kept its forecast for the year unchanged. Sprint is up 6% after it agreed to new terms with T-Mobile for their pending merger that take into account the deterioration in Sprint shares since the transaction was first agreed upon. T-Mobile's down 1%. Futures are lower this morning amid renewed concern about the impact of the coronavirus after cases increased outside of China. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 14 points. Dow futures down 114. NASDAQ futures down 35. The DAX in Germany's little change. 10-year Treasury up 11/30 seconds. Yield 1.47%. The yield on the 2-year 1.36%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.8% or 96 cents at $52.92 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.7%, up $27.20 at $16.4760 an ounce. The euro 1.0810 against the dollar. British pound 1.2937. And the yen is at 111.86. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Thanks so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate that. Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keene, thrilled you're with us on a Friday. It's a very eventful Friday and, of course, into your weekend reading as well. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, what you read is the T-Live blog, which is just phenomenal. And then there's this thing called Bloomberg Intelligence that Paul Sweeney helped invent, which is stunningly in-depth research on strategy and tactics of companies. Right now, we want it with Gina Martin-Adams, our wonderful equity leader in Bloomberg Intelligence, to really focus on the 5 big stocks. The Economist has a great cover this week of the total dominance of these stocks. Gina, let's start in a, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft kind of mood about this dominance versus 2000, 2001. It's a greater dominance now and a more focused dominance, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think if you really think about where we were even back in 1999, 2000, the top 5 stocks in that time period certainly dominated a lot of attention, certainly dominated a lot of market share, and we're in that position again, but we're in an even greater position. If you look at Microsoft and Apple alone, their market cap is bigger than the entire Russell 2000 small cap index. So it's a bit of an anomaly. We definitely have very, very heavy concentration risk in this equity market. The difference, however, and this is where I think investors sort of mix a lot of metaphors, is if it's a bubble, it means that you have extraordinary valuation levels, and that is not occurring. If you look at the biggest 5 stocks in the U.S. today, your earnings yield on those stocks is significantly bigger than it was in 1999-2000. So I think you have heavy concentration risk, but not necessarily a bubble developing in tech stocks.
Do those stocks on the cover of The Economist, do they have the margin elasticity to adjust if they have a revenue shortfall?
They do have reasonably high margin. I would say, though, that there is an embedded expectation that they will have this really long-term secular growth tailwind. And that's something that I'm a little bit more worried about is what happens, for instance, if, Facebook's growth rate starts to slow, Google's growth rate starts to slow materially. We're looking right now at the Facebook, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft. That group is producing double-digit earnings growth, double-digit net income growth, and most of that is because they're still in this secular growth phase globally. Anything that threatens that, I think, is problematic just because the top line, has to continue to grow at a really robust pace to draw capital.
Meanwhile, if you look at the tech sector, it's a tale of two cities. When you look at the contrasting one, which is energy, and you just recently did this in a really fascinating note, pointing out the energy sector weakness and tech outperformance are reaching extremes last recorded at the peak of the tech bubble. And you sent out this research under the subject, time to look at energy, ? Is it?
Yeah. I'm afraid not.
All right, answering the question.
I certainly wish that it were, but I think what's happened is a secular sort of shift in favor of tech and disfavoring energy that's really about inflation. At its core, inflation has driven this. Tech is the sector that drives this disinflationary trend and benefits from a disinflationary trend globally, while energy is the sector that is the laggard in a disinflationary trend. So until we get to an environment where you see the inflation regime shift, think back to 2002 to 2007. Energy stocks outperformed in that period because oil prices were rising and inflation was rising relatively rapidly. We need something like that to develop for energy stocks to outperform again.
Lisa, moments ago, the 30-year yield 1.9100 on the cusp of a 190 handle.
Yeah, and to Gina's point, underpinning this is also a real shift in inflation expectations. I was looking at the five-year break-even rates, and they've actually fallen today to the lowest since 2016. I'm just wondering, Gina, when you talk about this historic divergence that you're seeing between energy and tech, does it seem sustainable given the fact that we are in a deflationary environment?
Yeah, I think it can sustain. I mean, the trouble is, what does it do to the top line of the S&P 500, right? You get to a point where tech stocks are contributing so much. They're already, TMT as a theme is already 35% of the market cap of the index. It peaked at 40% back in the 2000 period. So you kind of get to a point where you feel like the market is so concentrated in any single sector's gains because it's lacking this inflation input to help the energy and industrials and materials of the world. It's very concentrated in defensive stocks that are beneficiaries of very, very low rates and low inflation, as well as tech stocks. At some point, you do want to see some catch-up for some of these laggards. I mean, it's really difficult to say you get a market that produces double-digit gains when two of its sectors, energy and materials, are still in negative territory for the year. You just lose a little bit of momentum. I think we're seeing that momentum loss already start to occur in stocks, and we're going to see some churning for maybe the next couple of weeks as we sort of blow off some of this excess in tech and maybe rationalize our expectations.
Gina, thank you so much. Gina Martin-Adams with Bloomberg Intelligence on the equity market today. And the futures at negative 13. Lisa, Dow futures at negative 110.
Yeah, and really the move being felt in the bond market and in gold, where you have bond yields touching or really just in the cusp of breaking new all-time low records. And you have gold breaking out, really producing some substantial gains. It just raises a question, are we leading to some sort of capitulation moment? Or, to Gina's point, are you seeing this rotation under the cover of equity markets that reflects the deflationary fears that we're seeing in bond and gold?
To me, it's fascinating, and within all the interviews we've done this morning, I mean, it's been a great set of conversations on these worries, and it's sort of into that Friday afternoon when all the doom and gloom articles are written about worry, worry, worry. And yet anyone out there constructive on a non-recession, constructive on the American economic experiment will tell you that's why you go higher, is because everybody's worrying.
Absolutely. There's a question, though, it's a big deal with respect to the big tech companies, which is the more they consolidate their dominance in a deflationary environment, when do they become, A, too big to fail, B, systemically important, and C, such a huge change agent for the economy that they need to be addressed on a policy level.
Now stay with us. Much more to talk about through the morning. There's a rumor Paul Sweeney is in the building. He'll talk about those various equities. The future's at -13. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers whose seas changed a lot.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Cardiff. Let's visit the Millennium Centre, said Dick. The National Museum, added Julian. The castle, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. We'd better leave now. Cardiff's so far away. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas. London to Cardiff in as little as 1 hour 42 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Cardiff Central. Terms and conditions apply.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification.
It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thank you for joining us. Bloomberg Surveillance, a Friday. Interesting Friday, nuanced Friday with real correlations in the market. Futures deteriorate modestly, -14, but in other areas, you really see some changes. The last hour has been challenging with bond yields lower and gold out to new highs. It's gotten better in the last 10 minutes, Paul Sweeney. I was watching gold vault up here in dollars. Good morning, Dennis Gartman, who likes to look at it in other currencies. Gold $16.40 for the ounce, up $24. With the velocity of gold up, you got to be on a 1700 watch.
I think you absolutely do, and this is a call that it's a combination of flight to quality, Tom, certainly with the coronavirus here, but there's also some fundamentals underpinning gold as well. So, a very steady climb up in gold, as I guess one would expect, given some of the uncertainties out there in the world.
Yield shift higher here. Maybe we'll get some economic data that will help out on that, but certainly what we see is a 30-year bond from 2.00% down to 1.92%. We say good morning, Boston, Washington, New York. Bloomberg 1130, Bloomberg 960, the Bay Area, in San Francisco. And a particular good morning to all of you on Sirius XM across this great nation, channel 119. In particular, shout out to Moline, Illinois. That would be the location of the John Deere Company, which is a good reason to go Moline with David Wilson.
Well, Tom, they're going to be kind of happy in Moline today because you've got Deere shares up about 7% in early trading. The machinery maker's fourth quarter profit unexpectedly rose as a pickup in farming outweighed a slump in construction.
Yeah.
Now, analysts expected adjusted profit to be down about 20% based on the average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. So you can see why the reaction in Deere is what it is.
I read this statement carefully, and I was sort of thunderstruck, David. Not that it was a positive construction, but there was really no negative in it other than, they're going to do cost reduction in a fancy MBA speak. But it was stunning how clean the statement was.
Well, they didn't really talk about the effect of the coronavirus either. So, that's part of the reason why it was clean. In any case, most active stock in early trading is Sprint, and it's also up about 7%. The wireless company agreed to amended terms for a takeover by T-Mobile US that will give more stock to Japan's SoftBank for its 84% stake in Sprint. Now, SoftBank is going to surrender some of the shares to the combined company when the deal closes, and will only get them back if it meets stock price milestones. You put that all together, T-Mobile shares off a bit in early trading, lower by about 0.5%. We've got one other deal to talk about. AVX is a company that makes electronic components, up 5.5%. AVX accepted a $1 billion offer from Japan's Kyocera for the shares it doesn't already own. Kyocera has a 72% stake in AVX. You've got HP lower, maybe 0.25%. The computer and printer maker adopted a shareholder rights plan that would impede a proposed $35 billion takeover by Xerox Holdings. Now, the plan would kick in if anyone buys at least a 20% stake in HP. And speaking of down a bit, you've got Carnival lower by 1%. The cruise line's Holland America unit canceled March and April voyages by the ship Westerdam after a passenger on its latest cruise tested positive for coronavirus. And you've got passengers on the Carnival ship docked in Japan that have also had positive
It really
tests.
Deteriorated. The news there, David, in the last 12 hours has really deteriorated.
It has. First Solar down 10%.
First Solar.
The solar panel maker's revenue trailed the average estimate for the seventh straight quarter. Earnings came up short of projections for the fifth quarter in a row. First Solar is looking at options for its solar farm development unit. And on the other hand, Dropbox.
Yep.
Up 16%.
Yeah, a lot of people use it.
I do.
Yeah.
It's an online data storage company. They posted fourth quarter earnings and revenue that beat estimates. They raised forecasts for this year's profitability and cash flow. And they authorized a $600 million stock buyback.
Very good. David Wilson, thank you so much. This is important. And I'm going to do the disclaimer right now. Of course, we're all affiliated with Michael Bloomberg. He is the founder of Bloomberg LP and, of course, of this radio and television operation as well. Something changed a couple nights ago.
Yep.
We went from 6 million eyeballs to 19.7 million eyeballs, and Major Garrett and CBS are going to take it to 22 million eyeballs on Tuesday night. Major Garrett joins us, of course, with CBS, and in support of Margaret Brennan and Face the Nation on Sunday. We're going to do it different this time, Major Garrett. You're going to be on the desk Tuesday night in Charleston. CBS joined by the Congressional Black Caucus Institute. South Carolina is the first state that some people will say is going to be a normal state. Is your debate going to repeat the fireworks we saw with Lester in Las Vegas? Is it going to be the same tone, or do you see a different tone?
Well, we're certainly going to try to keep the candidates on the time clock and on the issues that we raise. What they do with each other and how they engage each other is entirely up to them. And I've done 2 presidential debates before, and I can tell you, when candidates want to mix it up, it's very hard for moderators to control it, because one of 2 things happens. You either become the voice that can't tame the candidates, and you sound like this interfering, nagging voice of not reason, but just interference.
Margaret Brennan would be a nagging voice? I find that hard to believe.
No. But it's not what you are. It's what the viewers hear and perceive, and they're completely different things. And when you're on that debate stage and you're trying to corral not only the topic, get a follow-up answer, or get even one answer to a directly asked question, there's this fine line. Are you being a persistent journalist, or are you being a hectoring nag? And let me tell you, I've learned how fine that line is. We're going to do our best. What I do know is this. All of those not named Bernie Sanders are still fighting effectively for their political lives. They were in Las Vegas. They're going to be doing that again in South Carolina. That means they're going to mix it up. And all this talk and all this sort of fuzzy cotton candy in Iowa and New Hampshire about unity. Yeah. That's all gone.
Okay. It's going to be Nora Donald, Gail King, Major Garrett, of course, Bill Whitaker joins, and Margaret will be there. Margaret, meanwhile, has to go to Las Vegas to talk to the guy that needs a successful CBS debate like no one, and that is Vice President Biden. What does Major Garrett think the Vice President's mandate will be on that Tuesday evening?
Well, Joe Biden has got to come to that debate and give not only his best performance, but his most inspirational performance for South Carolina Democratic voters, 60% of whom, if you believe the exit polls and the history, and I do, will be African-American voters. This is his one and only remaining firewall. And if he does well in South Carolina, that could be a springboard for him to revive his campaign for Super Tuesday, which will be the very next Tuesday. Remember, our debate's Tuesday. The South Carolina primary is that Saturday, and then just 3 more days for Super Tuesday, 15 states voting. It's an incredibly collapsed and very tight Democratic primary and caucus calendar. So Biden has everything hanging in the balance on Tuesday at our debate. This is one of the reasons that Margaret is not talking to you right now. She's on a flight to Las Vegas for that interview tomorrow.
Major, what does CBS News have for Face the Nation this weekend?
Joe Biden.
That's it. that's what we need to hear.
That's the bell cow guest right there. That's it. And then the show is pulling together others. Obviously, there was a topic that came up yesterday. We reported on the CBS Evening News. I did, about this intelligence briefing last week, both at the White House and before the House Intelligence Committee. Russia trying to interfere, and an assessment that really irritated the president, trying to do so on his behalf. A lot of contestation about that, a lot of ramifications of that. I'm sure that topic will come up as well.
Maybe we'll get a movie review of Parasite. We got one from President Trump. Major Garrett, thank you so much. Really look forward to Tuesday night. Garrett, Whitaker, Brennan, Gail King, and Nora Donald, of course, CBS driving that debate forward. You can hear Ms. Brennan this weekend on Bloomberg Radio. Listen to Face the Nation Sunday, 2 p.m. in New York, Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Newburyport. Face the Nation this Sunday at 2 on Bloomberg Radio. And I do want to mention we're going to have some wonderful coverage Tuesday night wrapped around the CBS coverage. Look for that on Bloomberg Radio. And that, of course, followed by a special sound on with Kevin Cirilli, that from South Carolina. Right now, the special moment is a little bit of a rally in the markets, a little calming down here, Paul, off a really difficult morning. Yields are higher off the lows we had 25, 30 minutes ago. Even gold takes a bit of a breather here as well. Paul, it's a correlated market, and yet we're still trying to do equity analysis within it all.
I think we are, Tom. I think, people are looking at some of the uncertainties baking into the market, coronavirus and others. We're seeing it in the bond market. We're seeing it in the commodities market, not necessarily seeing it in the equity markets as much as maybe some equity folks would think, but maybe you can chalk that up to just very accommodative money policies around the world.
And, of course, important economic confab in New York today with the New York Fed. Our Michael McKee will monitor that for us. Right now with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. The number of people who have contracted the coronavirus in the Chinese capital has jumped sharply, including more than 30 in an outbreak at a major hospital, while many other parts of the country are reporting fewer or no new infections. Officials today reported one new case in Beijing, bringing the total in the city to 396, with 4 dead. 23 cases were recorded the previous day. More than 2,200 deaths have been reported because of the virus. President Trump continued his 4-state trip last evening with a rally in Colorado Springs after signaling he might pardon his former advisor, Roger Stone. The president talked about health care and says a different president should have been the one who deserved to be impeached.
We're defending your right to keep the doctor and to keep the plan of your choice. Remember President Obama 28 times, he said, keep your doctor, keep your plan. Keep your doctor, keep your plan. Keep your doctor, keep your plan, right? It was a lie. We should impeach him. We should impeach him.
The husband of Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg is talking. Buttigieg is the first openly gay man to head a major presidential campaign. Chasten Buttigieg told ABC even if his husband does not win this election, they will still feel victorious.
I obviously want Pete to be president, but if for some reason it doesn't work out, I will not for one moment hang my head in shame.
Chasten Buttigieg says he welcomes people onto the right side of history. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Time.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Okay, Bloomberg Business and Sports. Michael Barr and 2 other guys. Look for it tonight, 7 p.m. on Bloomberg Radio. Right now, Scott Soshnick with our Grapefruit League report. What do the Nationals do with the Astros at 6:05 tomorrow night? Are the Nationals going to, like everybody else, are they going to be pitching inside
high
on the
and tight,
Astros?
Tom, high and tight, just like your haircut.
Come on. I remember Bob Gibson, bringing it in.
But this is a bad example, though, because the Nationals won the World Series, so they're not the upset.
Okay,
Dodgers,
all
Yankees.
Season long, are the Yankees and the Dodgers going to be coming in on the Astros?
All you need to know is that Vegas is taking action on how many batters will be hit.
Are you serious?
Yes, you can bet on how many Astros will get plunked this year. I think it's 85 and a half is the over.
We're down to 83 now.
Are you?
Thank you. My Michael Barr comes with a number of the week.
Michael Barr, Michael goes back to Koufax and Drysdale. Don Drysdale didn't come in under the chin, but those guys had a skill to go inside. Have the pitchers today lost the skill to go inside and do it right?
No, I mean, Pedro Martinez knew how to do it. These guys know how to come inside. But, Tom, you're talking about 12 inches difference between a face and a shoulder. Dangerous. This is a dangerous situation.
Also dangerous. Bloomberg Business and Sports tonight, 7 p.m. An extraordinary podcast. Tens listen to it. This is Bloomberg.
Out here in the fields. Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Influential conversations from Bloom.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Build the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway. We're with you.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And U.S. stock index futures are dropping, with the shares across most of Asia. European shares are drifting. This amid renewed concern about the impact of the coronavirus after cases increased outside of China. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 10 points. Dow futures down 86. NASDAQ futures down 25. The DAX in Germany, little change. 10-year Treasury up 8/32, yield 1.48%. Yield on the 2-year 1.37%. NYMEX crude oil's down 1.7% or 90 cents at $52.98 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.3% or $21.30 at $16.4170 an ounce. The euro 1.0807 against the dollar. British pound 1.2933 and the yen at 111.92. Still watching Deere & Company shares up more than 7% after results beat analyst estimates. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney working from home. Tom Keaton working from home. With us now, Damian Sassar working from home as well. Damian, we really wanted to get you in to synthesize into the weekend the EM stress. I'm looking at my terminal. It's not nearly as smart as Damian Sassar's, Paul. But
no, he's got graphs and charts.
Lira, 612. Real, 4.40. These are funny numbers to our audience, but am I right that they denote a certain tension in EM?
There is some tension in EM. There is no doubt about it, Tom. I mean, look, these are huge moves. I mean, these are big levels. I mean, look, we're in no man's land here, specifically in those two currency crosses, the lira and the real, because there's nothing above it. We're at pretty much all-time lows on the real, and the lira is pretty much up there. But look, EM still is a sea of red. There's only 3 winners year to date, and even those 3 winners, the peso, that's the Mexican peso, the Indonesian rupiah, and the Israeli shekel, are just barely scraping on, and I've looked further back here. I'm looking at 5-year spot FX returns, and I'd be hard-pressed to find any emerging market currency over the better part of the last 5 years that is up versus the dollar outside of just a handful. So, look, in EM, this is nothing new, and you got to take what the market gives you, and we talked before I went on break last week about FX falls being at all-time lows, and you've got to take, look, I know a lot of people equate that to, picking up pennies in front of a steamroller, but hey, I'm talking shorting vol, but you've got to do it. You've got to get long vol here.
I'm confused. Damien's working from home, but his area code today is 649, which is Turks and Caicos.
Exactly.
Would you explain that to me?
Exactly. That's how Damien rolls. So, Damien, I'm looking at the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, down about 2.7% for the year, underperforming the markets. What would be a signal for me to think about emerging markets? Does the coronavirus thing just have to play out? What else should I be looking for?
Well, I'll tell you, Paul, I've been watching all week long, even though I have been traveling, and a lot of people have been on air talking about inflation rearing its ugly head again. They've been talking about defensive. They've been talking about gold and the Japanese yen. This is not a defensive move insofar as I'm concerned. This is about the dearth of stable carry in financial markets. And this is all about carry. This is all about income. Tom, you and I have talked about this. Don't mistake investors for buying utilities, and bank preferreds for their desire for income. This is not a risk-off move in that sense, insofar as emerging markets are concerned. And so I just want to stress that this is about finding carry in an ocean where there is very little of it left. And so, it's hard for me to kind of buy into the whole concept that, with an S&P trading at an all-time high and FX falls this low and China stimulus really starting to ramp up, that you shouldn't expect to see these moves in, high beta assets such as the emerging market currencies.
I haven't said this in a while. Mexican peso near 19, Paul.
So, Damien, okay, so where do you find that carry? If somebody wanted to kind of wade into maybe they see some value in emerging markets, how would you suggest people kind of take a look?
You know me, I'm still a fan of King Dollar. I'd still look to, kind of scrape the bottom of the EM dollar-denominated high-yield barrel, if there is such a thing anymore, and looking at, maybe stressed corporates and frontier sovereigns and the like, if you're indeed going to go there. But, I really have to say, to go local here, to go local EM, there's really only 2 that stand out to me. One is Russia and the other is Indonesia. And simply because, if you just look at their real effective exchange rates, I hate to say it, but, if you look at the Z-score relative to its 5-year trend, they don't seem so bad. They're not so blown out. You're still getting 5.5% nominal yields, and their FX has behaved rather, decently over the better part of the last 5 years, let's call it the medium to long term. If you look at some of these other currencies like the real, like the lira, as Tom was pointing out, I mean, you're talking about 5-year returns in excess of 30% versus the dollar. In the case of the lira, it's 60% over the last 5 years. How can you manage a portfolio with that type of volatility, Tom? You just can't. You just can't. So you have to lean into those dispersions. You have to take what the market gives you. When the market was painting FX falls that low, you had to get long them.
Damien, Al from New Jersey just emailed in. He goes, "What's a Z-score? What's a Z-score?" I don't want to go all Altman on you here, but what's a Z-score?
It's very simple. It's where we are today relative to where we were in history, normalized by the volatility over that period in time. That's what a Z-score is.
Okay, help me with some stability here. Philippines has not participated in the gloom. Why not?
So Southeast Asia is an interesting one, and I think, what we're seeing is a little bit of a rebalancing of supply chains throughout the region, so there's a little bit of, and if you just look at, for example, the Philippines is an interesting one because Duterte and the central bank are really erring on the side of perhaps, cutting in the face of rising inflationary pressures, right? So that's the dynamic that's going on there. That's the dynamic that you need to be aware of, and all the while, the currencies kind of, they wanted the currency to cheapen, and it just hasn't, sort of what Thailand's going through in a lot of ways. And so a lot of that is spillover from the coronavirus. A lot of it is spillover from the trade war between the U.S. and China. And the fact that some of these other currencies are, benefiting, I guess the value of their currencies are benefiting, although they don't want them to because it makes their exports less competitive abroad, right? So you've got this kind of dynamic in those few countries, Tom.
Well, Damien, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. And I really recommend if you're at Grace Bay, the bar there that's just off the pool, you can do marshmallows at the fires there late night with the kids.
Tom, you're invited anytime. I'll just fire up the jet and we'll fly on out.
Well, we did that. Surveillance Golf Stream. Damien Sassower from Turks and Caicos this morning. Greatly appreciated as well. It's all really romantic, Paul. And we talk about all these currencies, but there's times where you can really make a return there, and you don't make it like Apple buy, sell. There's some esoteric stuff going on there in this so-called carry trade.
Exactly, and there's nobody better to chat with about it than Damien. He's been doing it for so long. He's he talks to the smartest emerging markets investors out there on a daily basis. Really has a good handle on kind of what's going on out there, and so we always value his opinion when we think about emerging markets, but it just doesn't. You just don't seem to get paid for it broadly defined. It's just not there right now.
40 seconds here. Let's get an update on streaming. Disney Plus is the clear winner right now.
Yeah, and
I looked at Viacom CBS.
Boy,
what a train wreck.
Yeah, stock down 17% yesterday.
Why?
Just because I don't think expenses are higher. The synergies that putting the two companies together aren't as quick as people thought. But the big thing is it just didn't really articulate a good streaming strategy. They're putting a bunch of brands together.
So what's the CEO dynamic here with the family? I mean, it's been a soap opera. You know all the dirt. I don't need the dirt. We don't have the time.
Yeah, the family's been very supportive of this management team here, but yesterday was a real problem. So we're going to have to see how the company reacts going forward here.
Okay, well, we'll continue. Damien Sassower on short notice here.
Data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For first-class fitting. Morning. For 0% free credit with no deposit. For a nice surprise. Ooh. For bringing home a bargain. Heaven at long last. Carpet right for life. Up to 4 years interest-free credit. Minimum spend applies.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget,
Pancakes love Nutella.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
Had the same job for the last 15 years. Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. With its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney, and the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Today's competitive marketplace requires asset managers to become more operationally adept. See how you can transform your business with SEI's global platform, at SEIC.com/IMS. And stocks are lower at the open. The S&P 500 down 0.4% or 14 points to 3358. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.4% or 111 points to 29,111. And the Nasdaq's down 0.4% or 39 points at 9712. 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds. Yield 1.48%. The yield on the 2-year 1.37%. NYMEX crude oil's down 1.7% on 89 cents at 52.99 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.4% or $22.20 at 16.4270 an ounce. The euro 1.0809 against the dollar. The yen is at 111.93. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. It's been an extraordinary day here. Great set of conversations this morning. Tony Cosenzi with us earlier from PIMCO, and just lights out conversations. Julia Coronado on the Fed dynamics, the limitations the Fed has right now. And then we had David Leibowitz with us from JP Morgan, who was just brilliant on actual assumption. The foundation of all we do here, and this goes for Paul Sweeney inventing Bloomberg Intelligence as well, is its academic foundation. I look out on the Bloomberg Museum here, which, Paul, the terminals in the Bloomberg Museum go from 2020 all the way back to 1867. Alexander Graham Bell going, message go. Let them do that Morse code.
Exactly.
Something like that. And the foundation of this is the academic. So we're going to move here from, talking about the market, Dow down 210, 30-year bond is in. We all know that. With leadership, BNP Paribas' Mark Howard has really put to value the Fixed Income Analyst Society, which is an annual confab. I was there a decade ago or so with Mohammed Al-Arian as he took out a shingle on it. And Mark, we're thrilled to have you here this morning. As you put 3 more into your society, you'll do that. And you lead with Daryl Duffy. That's just wonderful. He's been foundational to the linkage of fixed income into banking, hasn't he?
Tom, you're absolutely right. We're thrilled to announce today, give you the scoop on this announcement with Professor Duffy, who is active on Bloomberg View as well now, but real leader, particularly in the field of credit derivatives.
Who else do you have going in this year?
Well, our 2 other nominees we're also thrilled to announce today are Sharmeen Masvar-Rahmani from Goldman Sachs Private Wealth and Tad Ravel, of course, from TCW. 3 fantastic practitioners, following on the heels of 3 great honorees last year when we had Mr. Iverson, Dan Iverson of PIMCO, the inevitable Bill Sharp, of Sharp Ratio fame, and of course Roger Ferguson from TIA. So we're thrilled about this, and we really like to recognize those who have contributed a lot, not just in the field of finance, but also outside of finance. And our honorees this year embody the spirit of giving back and contributing more broadly to the community, not just in the markets.
And what's so important about this, folks, is the underpinnings of this. I'm going to pick on William Sharp of Stanford, who's just been foundational in how we all think about risk and reward, or as I like to say, it's actually what's my reward given the risk taken, is Mark and Paul dive in here. We're dealing, folks, day to day on Bloomberg surveillance with rate structures that weren't in the textbooks Mark Howard studied.
Exactly right.
They weren't framed by William Sharp 5 decades ago. They weren't framed by the late great Kenneth Arrow, also of Stanford. They certainly weren't framed by Dr. L. Arian at any time and place. Mark, how does all their academics fit into the BNP Paribas space now, this artificiality of negative interest rates?
Well, as you know better than most, Tom, we're in a period of extreme central bank behavior contributed to by very unusual political and policymaker behavior, and that is causing a lot of traditional tools to go out the window and contributing to this surge in valuation, and more importantly, recently, a very sclerotic response to an exogenous shock in the form of the virus. And so we see a period of near-term volatility, as we've seen in currencies, as we've seen in rates, and to a less degree in equities. And we think that continues for a little while. BNP has been out more aggressively in terms of lowering our global growth view, because we think it's less of a V, more of a U, and there are higher tail risks. And we're starting to see that, Tom, in the idiosyncratic form, right? The race over the last few weeks has been to gauge the virus and try and anticipate its scope and magnitude, then to gauge the impact on growth. And now what we're seeing investors do is drill down and identify winners and losers, specifically in the equity and credit market and the emerging markets. Who's most exposed? And what we're seeing, Tom, is in the early stages, those who are financially levered are at greatest risk. And today we got a piece of news that's on the Bloomberg terminal about a company in Macau asking for financial waivers. Yeah. And I think that's something we're going to see more of in the weeks to come. And investors are really digging deep to figure out how to exploit that.
Paul, the middle child asked for financial waivers last night into the weekend, trying to get to Monday.
So, Mark, do you think the markets are generally speaking kind of pricing in accurately kind of some of the maybe economic risks from this virus? I look at yields down. Obviously, we talked about at or near historic lows. We see some weakness pretty much across the commodities complex, yet equity markets it feels like they're kind of shrugging it off. How do you make the discounting mechanism that is the markets?
Yeah, I think it's a head scratcher in a number of ways. But the bottom line is that there's still tremendous amount of cash looking for a home for investment. That's what we hear from our institutional clients. I was reading a story on your terminal today about how retail clients have stepped up their transaction volumes recently, particularly in the U.S. equity market. And as long as this money is chasing assets, it's a very brave person who shorts them too aggressively. So I think I think the trend is still your friend, as long as we don't have a tail risk, as long as the U holds and global growth doesn't go much worse.
So what kind of metrics are you looking at, signposts are you on the lookout for as it relates to V versus U versus something maybe even a little bit more cautious?
Well, my good friend Julia probably addressed some of those earlier today, so I'm not the macroeconomist that she is, but I do think that we're going to be looking very closely at what major leading corporations say in their upcoming earnings releases in the April time period, or even in the run-up in March when they normally would have to warn if they were going to miss results, and to indicate that they're seeing a stabilization in the drop-off of activity. For example, the first 2 weeks in February saw a 90+% decline in car sales in China. The next 2 weeks hopefully will be better there, and we'll see a moderation, and that'll be a data point that the market will turn to.
There's lots of speculation here, and I get it. Somebody will be right and many will be wrong, and who knows what it is. The bottom line is, and this goes again to this wonderful support that BNP and Bloomberg have of the Fixed Income Analyst Society, is when everything's said and done, it's about our listeners, the people that either acquire directly or indirectly these fixed income instruments. They're getting cleaned, Mark. They don't have a real yield. They barely have a nominal yield. Are we doing all this mumbo jumbo for the elites at the expense of the broader public?
Well, that certainly is a refrain that we hear in Europe, right, where savers have been terribly squeezed and are making quite a bit of noise both through the retail and the pension channel. I think there are certainly very broad issues, but at the micro level, you're absolutely right. It is really difficult for retirees and those who are trying to save, and that's forcing them into riskier assets. Right? We know that.
Yeah, it's called Apple. Apple's a fixed income instrument, Mark. One final question: what's your view of an actuarial assumption out 12 months or 120 months? I mean, does just BNP Paribas locked into a continued decline in that institutional pension assumption?
Well, now you're getting into the accounting and actuarial realm, which is way off my deep end. But I do believe
it's Friday. Go there.
Many of our clients, particularly in the pension and the insurance world, are heavily restricted by their regulatory criteria to pursue either yield or duration or both. And so when we have the 30 years you were talking about pushing all-time low levels, it creates some irrational behavior that then ripples onto other markets.
This is wonderful. Mark Howard, thank you so much for coming to us with this. Bloomberg is thrilled to be a contributing sponsor to the Fixed Income Analyst Society. Of course, it's the heart of the Bloomberg terminal. Going back to the YA screen, Mr. Howard is with BNP Paribas as they celebrate the academic work and the street work of Daryl Duffy of Stanford University, from Goldman Sachs, Sharman Masavarmani, and from TCW, the huge pension shop out on the West Coast, Ted Revell as well. Very, very cool. The Dow, negative 185 with our news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. Intelligence officials have reportedly warned lawmakers that Russia is interfering in the 2020 election campaign to help President Trump get reelected. Washington State Democratic Congressman Denny Heck says this is extremely dangerous for our nation.
I think the president will do anything he can in furtherance of his own political objective. It's really not a matter of opinion. He tried to shake down Ukraine in order to get them to help in his 2020 election, and he has specifically called for other countries, notably China, to get engaged in this effort.
President Trump said he would not immediately pardon his former associate Roger Stone, but indicated he would intervene in the case if courts don't overturn his conviction. President Trump says Stone was the victim of a biased jury.
The forewoman of the jury, the woman who was in charge of the jury, is totally tainted. When you take a look, how can you have a person like this? She was a anti-Trump activist.
Stone was sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for lying to Congress and tampering with a witness. Japan's health minister said the last cruise ship passengers who tested negative for the coronavirus will leave the Diamond Princess today after a much criticized quarantine of the vessel ended. The ship docked at the Yokohama port has the most coronavirus cases outside of China, with 634 confirmed. 2 former passengers have died. The U.S. plans to sign a peace agreement with the Taliban later this month. It comes as the State Department says the 7-day reduction of violence and a deal promised by the Taliban in Afghanistan will begin tonight. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. What do you see day 2, CBS Viacom?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the question 20%? Really has to be a struggle here for these companies to really define how they're going to play in the streaming business. Viacom was kind of playing both sides here. We're going to be the arms dealer. We're just going to license our content to any of the streamers that want it. Then yesterday they announced kind of what is their streaming product. So some people are questioning, what really is your strategy going to be? We know Disney is all in, Tom, with their Disney Plus and their ESPN Plus and their Hulu. They've really kind of bet the shop on the streaming business. We don't really have a clean strategy coming out of Viacom CBS. I think that's kind of what's reflected in the stock.
The differentiation there from Disney is stunning, where Disney's just got, gimme Disney, that's it.
That's right. And they certainly, Bob Iger, certainly bet the entire company on this strategy by buying not, $70 billion for 21st Century Fox.
What's NBC? Is it still called Peacock?
It's still called Peacock. And that's going to be, I think, they have some good content there. But again, it's a question, Tom, how many are you going to subscribe to?
How many do you need?
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to shake this out over the next couple of years.
Or weeks. Yeah. Negative 211 on the Dow, 29,000,008. Yield 1.91, the 30-year bonds. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Let's look at luxury. The private jet industry is flying high. New models such as the Gulfstream G500, Bombardier Global 7500, and Textron Cessna Longitude helped bring the market to its highest level since it was felled by the recession more than a decade ago. Private jet deliveries rose 15% to 809 aircraft, two-thirds of which went to North American customers. Sales jumped 17% to $21.1 billion. For something more down-to-earth, the Napa Chateau the Doogie Howser built is on the market. The widow of late TV producer Stephen Bochco is selling her 47-acre weekend retreat for $8.5 million. The French country-style main house has 3 bedrooms and 3.5 baths, plus a 2-bed guest house, and plenty of wood and limestone detailing, 5,600 square feet in all. Outside, there's a pool, olive groves, and formal gardens. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Vatsil Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Global.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. business activity shrank in February for the first time since 2013 as the coronavirus hit supply chains and made firms hesitant to place orders, a warning sign that the outbreak is starting to dent the world's largest economy. The IHS Market Purchasing Managers Index, measuring composite output at factories and service providers, fell by 3.7 points to 49.6, the lowest level since October 2013. U.S. stocks are sliding, gold surging, and Treasury yields falling to record lows as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus as it spreads outside of China. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is down 1%. It's down 32 points at 3340. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.9% or 273 points at 28,946. And the Nasdaq's down 1.3% or 124 points at 96.26. 10-year Treasury up 18.30 seconds, yield 1.45%. The yield on the 2-year 1.34%. NYMEX crude oil is down 2.3% at $1.27 at $52.61 a barrel, and COMEX gold up 1.8% or $28.20 at $16.48.80 an ounce. The euro 1.0840 against the dollar. The yen 111.63. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thank you so much. It's a sea change. We're going to stay in our programming here, but right now we've got a frame on the markets as well, as Karen mentioned, with that wonderful and complete data check. We've got some real abruptness here. I'm going to single Paul in what's not occurring. The dollar is not strengthened off safe haven, but at the same time, yen 111.63 hasn't moved. Foreign exchange in stasis, as I'm going to put it. Gold comes out and goes higher. That's a huge correlative effect. We're up 24. We're up $28 now. 16.49 the ounce. The market, I'm going to say, gives up 100 points off that moldy and expected lousy number.
And Tom, just highlight crude oil WTI off 2.3%, $52.60 a barrel. So really coming off that PMI data, the weakest since 2013. So we're starting to see, Tom, come into the U.S. economy, some concerns from the coronavirus as it relates to supply chain, as it relates to business demand, business investment. So starting to see that numbers reach in.
It's interesting to get to, I believe it's March 11th. Get the terminal. I'm logged on to the terminal on a Friday morning. I can do that. And March 18th is the Fed meeting. And of course, the official line is they've got time to monitor. They've got time to see the so-called V-shaped recovery that's going to occur with less of an epidemic and more of a stable viral economy. But you really wonder, Paul, with 11 basis points, 2-10 spread, how much time they have until the market tells them
to move
to do.
And we've seen that in the past, I think. And so there's definitely some concerns there. So, we are seeing that inversion in the 3s and 10s on the yield curve.
One more idea before we dash to Alex Steele, and that is the idea of a 1.8937 30-year bond. It's been thank God it was a 4-day work week for a 30-year bond. If it had been 5-day, it would have been ugly. What I know, and I had the number, Alex Steele, up on my screen. I'm thinking this weekend of sliding into an electric taxi cab in London and bringing it over to America. Do you know what that would cost me?
Yeah, like a lot of money.
Like a lot. I mean, compare $72,000 for the best taxi cab limo I've ever been in my life. Electric gorgeosity.
You're like really obsessed with this taxi.
Versus Toyota Camry, which probably is costing on an all-in lease, $3,012 or something? I mean, Alex, in your wonderful study here of electric vehicles and your special tonight at 9 p.m., the spread here between the U.S. and other nations is just extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. And with any sector that's undergoing some kind of big transition on a climate or energy-wise, the U.S. is having to play catch-up really, really fast. And you're seeing that stress with GM, you're seeing it with Ford, but you're also seeing it with the European automakers. Like Porsche Taycan, you can buy that for $182,000. There you go. But that's still playing catch-up to Tesla.
So are you surprised that we haven't seen the big automakers, whether it's Toyota or General Motors, or kind of get more into this market, be a little bit more aggressive? It seems like they're just sitting back waiting.
No, they're in it, but there was a distinction because everyone thought that the diesel thing was going to be the way to go. You're going to have all these diesel emission standards, and that was going to wind up saving the planet from your horrible CO2 emissions, and that was going to be the savior. But then all the diesel scandals hit in Europe, and then automakers couldn't hold that up, and then we sort of pivoted to electric vehicles. So in that respect, the automakers are late to that party. They also just didn't have the technology.
Just this time, Alex Steele, thank you so much. Tonight, 9 p.m. on Bloomberg Television.
EVs on the brink of change.
EVs on the brink of change.
I'm not sure I'm buying this EV technology thing right now.
The jury's out.
I don't know.
What I've learned, and I really learned this in Davos, how far behind America is.
Yes.
That may be a good or bad thing. Alex has a lot of good research on that. but it's way behind. Just because of time, we're going to dive right to it. And Carol Massar, as usual, Bloomberg Business Week, dead on the story, just dead on just nailed it with coronavirus. I mean, this market, Carol, in a 189 30-year bond is that shift from epidemic to pandemic, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think coming off of the PMI report, I think we're all continuing trying to assess what will be ultimately the impact of the virus. And, take China. That's the cover story of the magazine this week. And it's entitled Fragile China, because think about for how long hedge fund managers, short sellers, they have thrown out warnings about the potentially, catastrophic losses in China's financial system. And the interesting part is, there's a lot more debt, a lot more leveraging in China. The government has done some very creative moves to prop up the economy. And as a result, they're leveraged more than ever before. And what's interesting is they've been taking steps to bring that down, but now you've got the virus on top of it. So once again, you've got the government stepping in to either help out banks, help out companies, and that creates a whole other level of leverage again into the system. And you do wonder if this is the thing that kind of pushes them over. And I think, it just plays into kind of this environment we are, that trying to assess this kind of tiny black swan, perhaps, that's happening predominantly in China, but elsewhere.
What else do you have in the magazine?
A couple of interesting stories about two tech companies, little known, but you probably should know about them. One is a lot of financial innovation happening in Africa. This is about an app in Kenya specifically, looking to help to take people out of poverty, small loans, microloans.
You're saving a punchline.
Why?
You have Coco Melon.
Do you know about Coco Melon?
My au pair is all Coco Melon. It's on it's all my favorites are Coco Melon.
Do you know about the Baby Shark song that's like for washing, wash arm.
Yeah.
If you listen.
Why did you put Coco Melon on the cover? You would have sold more copies.
I will talk to Joe Weber about that. But you know what? This is like the most watched kids property, second most watched property on YouTube.
And what's great about this, folks, it's
I love that you know
important. It took forever to get to 1 million subscribers, and then boom.
And then boom, it took off. 2.5 billion now views we're talking about a month.
Views, yeah.
And this is a 55-year-old man. He lives in the California suburb. Who knew? He and his wife created these videos for his kids initially.
He just bought Atherton, California. Right?
Did you see that story?
Yeah, okay. Carol Massar with the Bloomberg Business Week, the cover story on Coco Melon. Look for that this week. The markets through the day on Bloomberg Radio, more data checks. Dow negative 251, a record low for the 30-year bond. We are produced by Colin of the Twins. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seizechange.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are slipping at the open as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed worries about the economic impact of the coronavirus, with more cases popping up outside of China. The CEO of Deere says farmer confidence is getting better. That's providing a boost to the big tractor maker, which just delivered a surprise earnings increase and maintained its annual outlook. His comments may help ease concerns about how much the outbreak of the coronavirus will delay China's return to U.S. farm markets. Shares of Deere are motoring higher today, and Sprint is ringing up gains. T-Mobile and the wireless carrier that it's acquiring have hammered out new terms for their pending merger, which recently got the green light to close. T-Mobile's parent wanted a better deal after Sprint's stock had tumbled since the original agreement was reached almost 2 years ago. The combined company will operate under the T-Mobile name. The S&P 500 down 0.6% early on in trading this morning. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, good Friday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. It is a risk-off day today. It looks like the coronavirus impacting the U.S. economy. We had some economic PMI numbers come out today, weaker than expected. We'll dig deep into that. Plus, we're going to take a look at Berkshire Hathaway annual report coming out, the annual letter coming out this weekend. What will investors be looking for? But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are down, Paul. Gold is up. Treasury yields are down as investors take a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus. U.S. business activity shrank for the month of February for the first time since 2013 as the virus hit supply chains and made firms hesitant to place orders. Jonathan Fenby, T.S. Lombard, chairman of China Research, tells Bloomberg it's not just the virus affecting markets, but it's uncertainty over the facts being relayed about the virus.
And there's a question about the data and as to actually, how widespread it is, and also the apparent length of the incubation period makes it even more difficult. We've now got workers going back to factories who are being put under 14-day quarantine. This implies that it may be there, and we don't really know about it.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.9%, down 31. The Dow is also down 0.9%, down 263, and the Nasdaq is down 1.25%, down 122. The 10-year is up 15.30 seconds with a yield of 1.46%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down 1.9% at 52.84 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.6% at 16.4740 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 111.65. The euro $1.846, and the British pound $1.2947. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is on now with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. Really a seminal moment in the equity and bond markets today after that PMI reading that showed the first drop-off and the deepest drop-off in the composite reading of the market PMI. You found that the 30-year Treasury yield plunged to an all-time record low, a 1.90%. You also saw that sell-off in equity markets really pick up steam theme, although we've clawed back from some of the steepest losses with the NASDAQ leading the way down 1.3%. The real fear here, and I would say, is not just that we saw the manufacturing side of things fall off a cliff, but we saw the first contraction, the biggest contraction of the services side of things since 2013. Joining us now to kind of figure out how significant this is for the road ahead for both equities and stocks, not to mention currencies. We've got Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, as well as, of course, Vince Signorella, our macro strategist here at Bloomberg, both in our Interactive Brokers studios. Dave, just can you give us a sense of how severe the turnaround was on these PMI data?
Well, I mean, you're looking at a day where you're seeing energy stocks fall and airlines fall. That kind of tells it all, doesn't it? Because after all, if oil's going down, you would figure the airlines would be doing well. And then you look at the biggest declines in the S&P 500, you see American off 3.5%. So that kind of puts paid to that idea. And it really does look like, I mean, think about it. We've had records for stocks for some time. So the lingering concern is that the U.S. economy is going to fall into a recession and, in essence, spoil the party. You've got those record low yields in treasuries you're talking about. You got strength in the dollar. You got gold above $1,650 an ounce. I mean, there's just a lot of signs that people are starting to hunker down. And given that we're really through fourth quarter earnings at this point, so you're not going to get the push from profits, maybe aside from the retailers, you can understand why that would play out in terms of what stocks are doing.
So, Vince, what do you make of the market's reaction here? I guess, obviously, a big uncertainty here as to how coronavirus would impact, when it would impact the U.S. economy. Looks like we got a little bit of news today.
Yeah, the forward-looking data out of the PMIs were not good, and the new orders, and that's what I think people are worried about. We thought there would be some drag in the first quarter from last year with the pushback in the tariffs. That seems to be happening. One of the things that people really aren't factoring in just yet, we look at the virus on the mortality rate, and that's a terrible thing. We worry about the spread of the disease. But the real worry that I don't think the market have quite priced in, but these numbers showed, is the supply chain disruption, and where if this lingers even longer, if you can't get the components to put your product together, that means even the U.S. economy isn't going to be able to stand up to the test.
I want to pick up on that, this whole concept of when do we reach capitulation? What are you looking for?
It's hard to say. Each individual company, each individual sector is going to be different. But, it looks like we've run down a bit on the inventory side. And if the inventories start to roll off and the supply chain isn't open, you sort of get two things from that. Number one, you have to find new places to get product. That's probably going to be more expensive. So one of the things that happens with equities is you probably see your cost of goods sold up, probably not really be able to pass the price on just yet, and that's going to impact earnings. So I think if this persists a little bit longer, we might start to see even a bigger drag on equities as earnings start to disappoint.
So, Dave, that kind of goes to thinking about the equity markets and how the equity markets have been reacting to this coronavirus. Prior to today, the market was still up 3 or 4% for the year, when you've had commodities really taking it on the chin, when you've had the bond yields as low as they are. Is it just that support from central bankers and easy money that's been kind of giving some stability to the equity markets?
Well, that's been a big piece of the puzzle. And then beyond that, I mean, you have people anticipating that you're going to get an earnings rebound. Now, that gets called more into doubt given what's been happening with earnings estimates for this year. I mean, you're back to the point now, we'll get updated figures today, that when you look at the first quarter, I mean, again, there's a real question, just as there was throughout last year, whether S&P 500 earnings are going up. Now, we saw that, hurdle get overcome in the first and the second quarter, and also in the fourth quarter. Third quarter decline. But you figure by now, I mean, given where the numbers were a few weeks ago, that companies would be getting past that, and they're not past that, and that becomes a concern, for where things are headed.
And just to give you a sense of how significant the drop-off in commerce has really been, given the coronavirus, in China, car sales sank 92% in the first half of this month, and you have people saying just no one's buying anything. Yep. So how does that manifest itself in the broader market? And I do have to wonder, Dave, when you start looking around at the underpinnings of the market action today, you talked about airlines, you talked about energy. Who else is driving the declines? How broad-based is this?
Well, it's pretty much all the main industry groups in the S&P 500. We can start there. Energy stocks especially. I mean, given that, we've seen them do especially poorly for some time, and we know China is a big consumer of oil and whatnot. So, certainly the declines are there. I mean, to the extent that you're seeing any gains, it's the more defensive areas of the market, the higher yielding kinds of shares, real estate, utilities, and the makers of consumer staples, food, beverage, tobacco. So that's sort of where we are here.
And Vince, you're a longtime trader. You've been in the ranks for a long time. When you talk to traders currently, what's the sentiment right now?
Not good, really. I mean, they're looking to the dollar for havens. One of the little inside baseballs, and you see dollar yen's off today, but I'm not so sure that's going to continue. Probably a little profit taking off the last 48 hours. There's a lot of yen calls were sold by the life insurance companies at 114. The market thinks that they're going to go for that, and if we push dollar yen higher and break 114. There'll be a panic push up to 115. That catalyst would come if gold keeps going. And if we get a breakout in gold on the upside, it'll look like more recessionary for Asia. And so the yen will get sold off, and that trade will come through. Also, for those buying the euro right now, just a little reminder for what Lisa just mentioned, all those car sales in China are basically German.
Yeah.
So
and
I wouldn't be rushing to get long the euro at these levels.
And this is something that a lot of people are pointing to, and certainly is on the ECB's mind as far as what else they can pull out of their toolkit to stimulate an economy that's getting battered yet again by coronavirus fears. Vince Signorella, thank you so much. Dave Wilson, thank you as well, both with terrific perspective. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, new warnings are going out about Russian plans to interfere in the 2020 election, and President Trump reportedly isn't happy about them. Multiple outlets are reporting that intelligence officials briefed the House Intelligence Committee last week about new Russian efforts to help the Trump campaign and to meddle in the Democratic primary. President Trump reportedly dressed down then acting director of national intelligence Joseph Maguire the next day.
He's said all along that he doesn't believe that Russia interfered on his behalf. That obviously runs counter to what U.S. intelligence agencies have been saying, but that certainly isn't something that Trump has been amenable to as a possibility. He claims that he won without any help from Russia.
It's Bloomberg's Kathleen Hunter. This week, the president named Rick Grinnell acting DNI to succeed Maguire, and the president said he could name Georgia Congressman Doug Collins as a permanent replacement. Collins took himself out of the running today, though. He told Fox Business he's focused on running for the U.S. Senate in Georgia. The coronavirus outbreak may be entering a new phase outside China. South Korea reported 2 deaths and another 64 cases today, bringing its total of number of infections to 204. That's as China continues to update its own infection count. Bloomberg's Stephen Engel is in Hong Kong.
They got previously unreported cases out of 5 different prisons in 3 provinces. So you have those supposedly isolated clusters adding to the total again. They revealed the numbers and then they added more.
The Chinese government says the coronavirus outbreak is tentatively contained but has not reached a turning point yet. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folk.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
What am I saving for? My passion, food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website. 18 plus UK residents.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
At Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks and Treasury yields are down. Gold is up. It's attributable to the coronavirus effect. Chip makers are leading the losses as the S&P heads for its first weekly decline since January. U.S. business activity shrank in February for the first time since 2013. Yep, it's the coronavirus, and they're blaming the supply chain hit that made firms hesitant to place orders, a warning sign the outbreak is starting to dent the world's largest economy. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 1%, down 33. Dow's down 0.9%, down 267, and the Nasdaq's down 1.4%, down 138. The 10-year is currently up 18.30 seconds with a yield of 1.45%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.6% at 53.04 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 1.9% at 16.50 an ounce. The dollar yen 111.53, the euro $1.0858, and the British pound $1.29.49. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
This morning, everyone was watching 30-year Treasury yields, which were hovering on the precipice of an all-time new record. And it reached it after the PMI data that came out this morning from market. U.S. business activity shrank this month for the first time since 2013, with the services section of the index seeing a particularly big drop-off. The question here is, what is the message being sent by bonds, which are reaching new all-time lows, and how incoherent is it with equities reaching or hovering near all-time highs? Joining us now, Ben Emmons, Managing Director of Global Strategy at Medley Global Advisors, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios. So let's start there. What is the message being sent by 30-year yields at all-time lows?
So on the one hand, Lisa, it's a technical message, right? There's a apparent positioning going on with hedge funds going short and the asset managers going long, and that's probably very much driven by different views about where the economy will be heading, as well as hedging against the downside risk of this virus outbreak. On the other hand, it's to that fundamental picture. I think the inflation picture is going to see a significant moderation this year. If the collapse in China is, as we speak, happening, in terms of production data, then inflation data in China will go down quite a bit, and that will really transcend down globally. I think this is another reason why bond yields are lower in the United States.
How do you think the Fed is going to respond to what appears to be a growing problem? It doesn't appear like we've seen the peak of the coronavirus risk.
So all these central banks, in fact, are monitoring, as they say, and we know that they don't have the precise tools to combat any of this. But they do know, as we know now, is that companies are responding quite dramatically to this outbreak, shutting off production, shutting down air traffic. So there will be something of a message there to tell to companies about, well, is this really something that's going to drag down global growth just because it's a virus outbreak that we've had in several cases before, and by far not as severe as a normal influenza. At the same time, central banks will likely stand by with liquidity, as we saw from the PBOC and the Fed still ongoing, that other central banks will do that too. And I think that liquidity operation is pretty effective, right? If you think about the shock that we just went through, it could have been much more severe if we did not have liquidity injections by the PBOC and ongoing by the Fed. So will the ECB and the BOJ follow with something like that? Not unlikely if we're getting more downdraft data.
I want to go back to something you were talking about, this sort of technical factor with hedge funds going short treasuries and insurance companies, pensions going long, particularly on the long end. And I'm wondering if this is a short squeeze that we're observing, which is really responsible for the rally that we're seeing in treasuries, then is it potentially not that negative or even positive for equities because it keeps borrowing costs so low that it continues to support the relative valuation case for equities?
Yeah, I think you're right about that, because if bonds work well as in total return, as a hedge against the downside risk, what a long asset manager would do, as sort of that view, in addition that you say low borrowing costs, which affect positively for corporations and housing and consumer spending, then yes, this, and that's typically, by the way, the case. When you have flight to safety, believe it or not, there's actually stimulus to the economy. Very often happened that way. We saw it in August that way too, and subsequent data recovered. Low interest of falling long-term interest rates tend to do that. So I think this is another phase of short squeeze, flight to safety leads to ultimately stimulus in the economy, and that could be positive for stocks.
Some of the consensus trades that we heard coming into 2020 was maybe this is the time where international markets will outperform the U.S. Does this growing concern about the global economy featuring China, does that call that trade into play, maybe into question?
I'm actually on the side, Paul, of that it actually makes it even more compelling than before. And here's why. So if you think about the data that's coming out now, say the PMI data in Japan overnight, or the export orders out of Taiwan and so forth, pretty big drops in that data, right? And that's what you would expect if you have a production shutdown in China. That's pretty extraordinary to go through that at the moment. But the more that data drops, the more encouraging the V-shape, as we call it, recovery would become. So I'm more in that camp, which makes actually the relative value difference between U.S. and foreign markets even more compelling. And yes, the valuation of Asian markets is at a sort of 15-20% discount relative to U.S. markets. And if the U.S. markets are benefiting so much from a flight to safety with stock values up, bond value up, and the dollar up, it becomes a case at some point that anticipating this V-shape that foreign assets look more attractive. So I remain on that trade. It's just a little bit knocked out of bounds for the first quarter. It will come back in the second half, I think.
When is bad news again?
Well, that's another good point, Lisa, of course, because the scare that we have a little bit in markets today is about this word pandemic, right? Is it becoming a pandemic in Asia and then it spills to the rest of the globe? But you also have to put that in perspective how previous viruses have worked. They tend to do spread around. And it really comes down to, I think, about the infrastructure in countries, how to deal with an outbreak of a virus. You know, the most worrying would be in say, South Africa or African nations, right, who do not have any infrastructure, as the WHO warned for. But for the developed markets, that's a different story. And because markets react now because a virus outbreak links to production shutdown, delay of any kind of activity because people have to stay home, there's still a lot of workaround, I think, to that too. A lot of companies are preparing to say, the supply chain shift will happen anyway. I'm going to prepare differently to continue my production because, you got to adhere to stockholders. So by and large, I think pandemic is the fear factor in markets. But ultimately, I think it's still going to be a recovery from here, not a recession.
Okay. Ben Emmons, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate chatting with you, as we do periodically. Ben Emmons, Managing Director, Global Macro Strategy for Medley Global Partners, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio.
Really interesting to hear how the decline in yields could end up being a positive for stocks, even though people usually look at the flight to safety as being a negative message for equities, sort of the modern conundrum of markets.
Yep, absolutely. So we had the S&P down here 25 off the lows, the Dow down 203 points. That's 29,019 on the Dow Jones Industrials. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The coronavirus is hitting Wall Street. The stock average is dropping almost 1 to 1.33% after investors saw some proof. The Dow down 268 points. The Nasdaq 129, the S&P 33. The IHS snapshot of business activity this month shrank for the first time since 2013 because the coronavirus hit supply chains and made firms hesitant to place orders. Deere & Company saw some of that. It says the virus could be a factor in how fast China comes back to U.S. agriculture. Overall, though, Deere's last quarter was better than predicted. Farmer confidence firmer now that the U.S. and China have worked out a partial trade deal. Shares are up 9%. The International Air Transport Association says, however, the virus could erase $29 billion worth of revenue for airlines, but it's mostly talking about Chinese airlines. The trade association figures a sharp drop in business now. We'll see a quick recovery later. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep
Send message to Elise. Salut. Sorry, I'm running late. Just in the car now. Send. I forgot the cake. Send. Actually, great news. SatNav has found a new route. See you in 10.
Message on the move in the Citroen C1 and stay connected. Experience Citroen C1, available from £149 per month with initial rental of £149. Citroën. Please drive responsibly. Citroen UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. Personal lease. You will not own the vehicle. Offer on fill VTI 725 speed manual, 6,000 miles per annum. Guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. PSA Finance UK Limited.
The B&Q 3-for-2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3-for-2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3-for-2 it. Excludes white and ready mix trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles.
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Sometimes the simplest method is the best one.
I think even I could figure it out today.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
You had a high estimate. It beat your high estimate.
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up on Bloomberg Markets, we're going to be talking more about the market action as we see a real rally gain steam in the U.S. Treasury market, plus the dollar selling off. Also, we're going to take a look at what to expect from Berkshire Hathaway's investor letter out tomorrow. We're gradually getting more pessimistic about using our money. Warren Buffett problems. Right now, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are down, Lisa. This as cases of the new coronavirus swelled in South Korea and more companies warned investors about a hit to their profits and revenue. Tech companies are leading the losses as U.S. business activity shrank in February for the first time since 2013 as the virus hit supply chains and made firms hesitant to place orders. Timos Fiotakas, the Glen Point Capital head of research, tells Bloomberg the after effect of the virus could last for some time to come.
You look at previous cases where viruses had a lot higher mortality rates in absolute numbers, not in percentages, like the swine flu and so on and so forth. Markets weather that really well. The main big problem here is that the response has been one where the Chinese economy, the biggest contributor to global growth, has been shut down, and it's not coming back on within a day.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.9%, down 31. The Dow is also down 0.9%, down 263. The Nasdaq is down 1.25%, down 123. The 10-year is up 18.30 seconds. The yield 1.45%. West Texas Intermediate crude's been hit down 1.3% at 53.15 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.7% at 16.4740 an ounce. The dollar yen 111.59, the euro $1.854, and the British pound $1.29.59. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Tara LaChapelle. She covers all things industrial for Bloomberg Opinion. And for those Warren Buffett watchers, tomorrow's a very important day. That's when Berkshire Hathaway releases its annual letter. We get a sense of kind of how Warren is viewing the world. To help us preview that, we have our good friend Tara. So Tara, again, Warren Buffett watchers, tomorrow's a big day. What's the expectation here? Because they had been kind of quiet on the acquisition front.
I think what people are really hoping for is that Warren Buffett is going to talk a little bit more about what he's going to do with all that cash. Berkshire Hathaway's cash was $128 billion in the latest quarter that they reported. So we'll find out tomorrow when his letter comes out. We'll have the fourth quarter earnings report with it, and we'll see if that cash moved at all. He didn't make any significant acquisitions during the period, as we know. And last week we got their 13F filing and saw that they didn't really make any tremendous purchases in the stock market either. He bought a stake in Kroger, a small stake in Biogen, but nothing really big. And we don't think that they've done a lot of Berkshire buybacks yet, even though he's talked about doing that. So hopefully he can, get people excited about what's going to happen. And maybe he'll be able to find his big elephant this year, the big acquisition he's been trying to do. He turns 90 in August. So one would think that, time is of the essence and he'd want to do something.
Yeah, although throwing some cold water on that, Berkshire vice chair saying in an interview with Bloomberg, we're gradually getting more pessimistic about using our money. It's been a long time since we bought anything. This is Charlie Munger. And I have to say, again, Warren Buffett problems, the idea that you just have so much money, you don't know what to do with it. But you raised a really good question, Tara, which is why don't they buy back more shares or just give massive dividends to their investors?
Yeah, we're not sure. We know Buffett and Munger are really opposed to the idea of a dividend, and he's kind of started to mention that more often the last couple of years. It used to be kind of unheard of that they would even do something like that. So the fact that he's brought it up, I just don't think they're at the point of being willing to pay a big one-time special dividend. I think maybe that's something his successor would want to be able to have the opportunity to do should they need it. But I think Buffett, his goal is still finding a deal. And Munger always tends to be sort of the more pessimistic one of the two. Buffett in his letter every year, he always gives that pep talk about America and how great America's prospects are. And, kids born today are better off than he was, and so on and so forth. And I don't think that'll change in this letter. But I think you will see that growing frustration with the markets that he just hasn't been able to find anything to put this money to work on.
It's interesting, Terry, you mentioned succession. What's the status of that? I mean, they just kicked this can down the road and down the road. Do we have any greater clarity? I know there's some new hires, pretty senior positions. But what's the latest?
I think, if anything, it's gotten more uncertain because, so a couple years ago, they did promote Greg Abel to be vice chairman of everything that didn't have to do with their insurance business. And Ajit Jain, who came from the insurance side, they put him in charge of their huge insurance operations. And so that kind of set the two up to be the next in line to become successor. Ajit's a little bit older, and it seems like Greg is kind of the favorite for the job. Greg also got to speak at last year's annual meeting for the first time publicly, which was kind of unusual and I think really symbolic. But then Todd Combs, who came from the investing side of the business, was promoted to run Geico. And I think that got a lot of people thinking, that is Todd another person that he's looking at, or maybe there will be sort of a split role when his successors take over, someone doing capital allocation, another person running the operational side of the business. We just don't know. So hopefully he addresses that, though knowing Buffett, he probably won't say very much.
Yeah, although in 2019, just to put this into perspective of how much pressure they're under, they missed a bunch of deals and their shares rose at a slower pace than the S&P 500. It was their worst underperformance since 2009. There's a question, is their strategy one that fit with another time in history of the stock markets that is no longer, and that they are really coming to that realization at a time when they aren't sure how to deploy their cash?
It's true. I mean, the true Buffett stands, they don't really worry much about the stock price and the fact that it's lagging, which is kind of funny. It's a very unusual trait that Berkshire has still. But I think, after going to last year's meeting and seeing that the investor base really reflected what we see at Berkshire itself, where it skews older. These are people that have a lot of respect for Buffett, but I don't know how they get that younger generation interested in a stock that's lagging so much. So I think this is going to become a bigger question when his successor is in charge. Does this strategy work? Does being a big conglomerate with all this cash that's very difficult to put to work, is that the best way to run this? Or do they need to change strategy? And I don't think that'll ever happen under Buffett, but I think those questions start to arise when you think about when he's not there any longer.
So you're working tomorrow, aren't you, Tara?
I am, bright and early.
I just honestly, why do they do it on Saturday?
I think, he has said, who knows if this is the case, but he has said that, he doesn't want the stock overreacting to things when they release during closer to market times, and especially now that the way they have to report their stock holdings and how that changes their earnings. But I think he just likes journalists working on Saturdays.
And the spotlight, because nobody else is going to compete.
Oh, that's a good point.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
100%. Yes, Tara LaChapelle of Bloomberg Opinion, thank you so much, as always, for your insights here. Really amazing. $128 billion of cash.
They own 250 million shares of Apple.
Yeah, they've
That's
actually more than doubled the shareholdings since 2016 when they started getting in. They own $79 billion of the shares. But Warren Buffett said this is not a tech story for him. It's one of share buybacks and dividends, as well as the consumer story, which is really interesting. That's what he understands more than the tech side. Right now, let's head down to our 1991 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World's and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, thanks. America's longest war could be a step closer to its end. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports the U.S. has plans to sign a peace agreement with the Taliban a week from tomorrow.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has released a statement saying that negotiators in Doha reached an understanding in what has become America's longest-running war. The statement says negotiators, quote, have come to an understanding with the Taliban on a significant and nationwide reduction in violence across Afghanistan. Pompeo says the progress made in those talks represents a real opportunity. Once the signing happens, talks begin between the Afghan government and the Taliban. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
The Nevada caucuses are tomorrow for the Democratic presidential candidates, and some of them are sharpening their attacks against the newest entrant in the race. At a CNN town hall last night, Elizabeth Warren renewed her call on Michael Bloomberg to release his former employees from non-disclosure agreements.
If he's not willing to remove those gags and let those women and maybe those men talk then he is disqualified from being president of the United States.
And in an interview that'll air this weekend on CBS 60 Minutes, frontrunner Bernie Sanders said he was surprised at how unprepared the former New York City mayor seemed during Wednesday night's debate. We should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Players on the U.S. women's soccer team are seeking more than $66 million from the U.S. Soccer Federation in their gender discrimination lawsuit. Those damages were included in a slew of papers filed in federal court in Los Angeles last night ahead of the trial that's beginning in May. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Are you interested in a challenge?
The rules say you can't have a big 4x4 SUV that combines power with fuel efficiency. But the new Vauxhall Grandland X Hybrid 4 breaks all the rules. The smart petrol-electric hybrid engine combines 300 horsepower with up to 204 mpg. That's right, 204. Search Grandland X Hybrid and test drive now at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Official WLTP Grandland X Hybrid 4 test figures. For comparison purposes only, obtained using combined battery power and fuel. Real-world figures may vary.
Winter joggers of London, it's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
The B&Q 3-for-2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3-for-2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3-for-2 it. Excludes white and ready-mix trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This Monday, February 24th, the sports world celebrates the lives of Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna with a memorial at Staples Center in Los Angeles.
It was my dream to be a Los Angeles Laker.
Buckle up for Kobe Bryant! The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles!
Wherever you are Monday morning, you can listen to live coverage of Kobe Bryant's memorial on TuneIn. Beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, search Remembering Kobe Bryant to honor the basketball legend and his family.
Mamba out.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks have taken a leg down, falling sharply after the number of new coronavirus cases escalated, fueling worries over a pronounced global economic slowdown. We take a look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 1.1%, down 38. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 1.1%, down 315. And the NASDAQ is down 1.6%, down 155. The 10-year is up 22.30 seconds. The yield is 1.43%. West Texas Intermediate crude is now down 1.5% at 53.05 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 1.8% at 16.50.40 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 111.53. The euro $1.862, and the British pound $1.29.77. Business activity in the U.S. shrank in February for the first time since 2013. It's about the coronavirus and its hit on supply chains that made firms hesitant to place orders. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Just to give you a picture of what's going on in the bond world, you see the 30-year yield reaching new all-time lows, 1.89% on the 30-year Treasury. You see the dollar having its worst sell-off versus its peers of 2020. Gold shooting higher. A big question of what's driving this. Is it just the fear that the coronavirus spread is bleeding into the services and industries in the United States, previously thought to be a little more immune, or is this something larger? Joining us now is Mark Rosenberg, founder and chief executive officer of GeoQuant, which is based in San Francisco and looks at the geopolitical risk generally and the global picture. He's also an adjunct professor at Columbia University. Mark, can you give us a landscape here? We talk a lot about the coronavirus and what the potential bleed through could be on industries, but then economists say, well, there's going to be a V-shaped recovery. But on the political front, is there something that's going to be equally potentially difficult for markets to digest on the political sphere?
Sure. I think with a health risk like the coronavirus, you want to look at the implications for social instability in the countries affected, and in turn the stability of the government. Now, those generally have more latent effect on markets, but I think when it comes to a large economy like China, if there were indications that this virus was disrupting kind of social stability in the country, or if there was news, as there has been of late, that it may be weakening the government, then I think you can get some concern around the potential of the government to respond to a shock like a health, like a disease outbreak, like the coronavirus.
So, Mark, we obviously are getting into the heat of the election cycle here. We kind of know where President Trump stands on a number of issues that are important to markets and investors. When you talk to clients, how are you framing up the Democratic side of the field?
For us, it's really about the strength of the Democratic Party and kind of more generically the opposition to the incumbent versus the Trump administration or the current incumbent. And according to our models, that's probably the primary driver of Trump's likely reelection right now is in fact the relative weakness of the Democratic Party as an opposition party, as demonstrated, I think, by some of the dysfunction in the primary process, by the still unclear field, the growing likelihood that a more kind of divisive extreme candidate like Bernie Sanders will be the nominee. Those are the factors driving, what we call kind of institutional risk, institutional support risk for the administration. That risk is down as the Democratic Party looks weaker and weaker.
So let's talk a little bit about the Democratic Party. It seems like after this week's debate, it was the first that Michael Bloomberg, who is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP and this radio station, was a participant. Bernie Sanders appeared to consolidate a lot of his support. People thought that he emerged a winner. They also thought, though, that President Trump consolidated his win, given the fact that there was a lot of circular firing squad type of activity. How significantly do you think the Democrats were set back?
I'm not sure the debate itself was any kind of critical juncture in setting back the Democrats. I think it was more a symptom of, what we saw in the previous debates and then the primaries and caucuses so far, which is, a field that's heavily divided, and a group of candidates that all, ostensibly agree on the goal of defeating Donald Trump and uniting to do so, but are now just inherently engaged in a process, the primary process, where they're in some ways making that less likely because they are fighting against each other as opposed to the common, quote unquote enemy.
So, Mark, Bernie Sanders is leading in the polls right now. Can he beat President Trump?
According to our models, and again, these are kind of generic incumbent survival models. No, in that Bernie Sanders will be a candidate that would have trouble uniting the Democratic Party, and as such would weaken the strengths of the opposition vis-a-vis the incumbent, and so the incumbent would be more likely to win. And so the scenarios we're running with our models, the Sanders candidacy makes a Trump re-election more likely.
What about Pete Buttigieg? What about Michael Bloomberg, whose performance was panned pretty significantly by most of the coverage following the debate?
Again, generically a more moderate candidate, a candidate more capable of winning swing voters, of winning suburban white voters in key swing states that are in many cases the key to the election, is likely to beat Trump, right? And certainly makes Trump's reelection less likely. So in our models, it's a relatively simple trade-off between a candidate that is more likely to win, what political scientists call the median voter, and which in the case of key states is really a swing voter, or one less likely to win those voters. And in our models, Sanders is less likely, whereas a more moderate candidate is more likely.
So, Mark, is there any indication that if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination, that he or the Democratic Party could move him more to the center to maybe appeal to some of those swing voters? Do you kind of put any of those odds in your model?
We don't model that directly. That does make kind of common political sense and is generally the way party candidates run in the general election. They generally pivot more to the center in order to capture a larger swath of the electorate. Sanders has made a career of not doing that, and so just anecdotally, it suggests that kind of dynamic is maybe less likely this time around. But to be sure, in a more with a more generic candidate, that's exactly what you would expect to happen. And given again that all Democratic candidates are at least vocally saying their priority is beating Trump, that would be the right strategy. It's just not clear that is what will actually happen.
Mark, just real quickly here, I'm wondering, based on history, how soon does the Democratic field have to shrink or consolidate support behind one or two candidates in order to have a better chance going forward of defeating President Trump?
So there isn't really a clear historical pattern. I think, the primary calendar, in terms of opposition beating incumbents, the primary calendar is relatively set in the United States. And so there isn't really a kind of date by which the Democrats need to, coalesce or form a coalition by which they make their success in the election more likely. I think the general rule in this case is the sooner the better.
Mark Rosenberg, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your thoughts. Mark Rosenberg, founder and CEO of GeoQuant, also an adjunct professor at Columbia University. He is based in San Francisco. Some interesting commentary about the election and kind of what their models are showing. And it appears to be, from Mark's comments, pretty predisposed or towards President Trump getting reelected, unless, maybe the field somehow coalesces around a candidate and maybe can put up a stronger fight.
Yeah, and then there'll be the question of whether any candidate on the Democratic side could get something done without both sides of Congress. Meanwhile, I should just mention that right now, Fed funds futures are pricing in a full 0.5 percentage point rate cut through the end of 2020. So really shifting their rate cut expectations forward. S&P down 33 points. That's about 1% off of the lows. This is Bloomberg.
That saying, success.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
The rules say you can't have a big 4x4 SUV that combines power with fuel efficiency. But the new Vauxhall Grandland X Hybrid 4 breaks all the rules. The smart petrol-electric hybrid engine combines 300 horsepower with up to 204 mpg. That's right, 204. Search Grandland X Hybrid and test drive now at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Official WLTP Grandland X Hybrid 4 test figures. For comparison purposes only, obtained using combined battery power and fuel. Real-world figures may vary.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years. What we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up on Bloomberg Markets, the sell-off deepening. We're going to discuss what's behind it. Is it simply the disappointing PMI data? Plus, we're going to take a look at Deere's earnings, and we're going to take a look at the municipal bond landscape as yields plunge to all-time lows. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Bit off earlier lows, Lisa, but still well down as stocks sink. Gold's up, Treasury yields are down, and investors are taking a defensive stance amid renewed concern about the economic impact of the coronavirus. John Bilton, J.P. Morgan Asset Management Head of Global Multi-Asset Strategy, tells Bloomberg the virus will be particularly hard on particular sectors.
And so when we look at something like the airline industry or consumer discretionary, of course, it's going to take a bigger hit because these are purchases that get made that can't be carried forward. You either fly or you don't, or you either make an impulse purchase or you don't. So those sectors possibly could take a bigger hit. Things like manufacturing, of course, we've got supply chain disruption right now, but oftentimes what you see is that simply pushes demand into the forward, into the future.
Meanwhile, U.S. business activity shrank in February for the first time since 2013. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 1%, down 33. The Dow's down 0.9%, down 267. And the NASDAQ is down 1.4%, down 133. The 10 years up 18.30 seconds. The yield is 1.45%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.8% at $52.91 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.6% at $16.46 even per ounce. The dollar yen, 111.73. The euro, $1.853. And the British pound, $1.29.59. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Paul and Lisa.
Greg, Jared, thank you so much. We have read on the screen certainly some concerns about the coronavirus impacting the U.S. economy with some PMI data earlier today. Let's see where the action is with small caps. We welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
Looking at bigger declines in smaller companies than larger ones. We can start there. The Russell 2000 index down 1.1%, and the S&P 500 is lower by 0.9%. Steepest drop in the Russell belongs to EyePoint Pharmaceuticals, whose ticker is EYPT. The drug developer has fallen about 25.5%. EyePoint is raising about $22 million by selling the equivalent of a 12% stake. Appian, ticker APPN, has declined about 19.5%. The business software maker's fourth quarter sales trailed analyst average estimate in a Bloomberg survey by the most since it went public in 2017. And Conduent, ticker CNDT, has lost about 19%. Fourth quarter earnings at the business processing company were lower than estimates. Now, the Russell's biggest gain belongs to Tonkagen, ticker TOCA. The drug developer has risen 65% to $1.49. After Green emerged with closely held Forte Biosciences. Forte will control the combined company. And Ducommun, ticker DCO, has added 19.5%. The maker of airplane parts posted fourth quarter earnings that beat analysts' highest projection.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, thank you so much for being with us. We are so lucky to have Brooke Sutherland in the office with us because always we're lucky to have her. She's a wonderful human being and writer and analyst, and she's a Bloomberg opinion columnist here with us in our interactive broker studios. We're going to talk about Deere, the shares surging the most since 2016, up more than 7% after a better than expected earnings. And then the PMI data came out that was incredibly disappointing, indicating that industrial companies ratcheted back some of their orders, as did, frankly, services, if not more so there. I'm just wondering how much you read into the PMI data on the industrial side and sort of what it says about the tipping point of momentum here behind a sector that's really been struggling for a while.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, the PMI reading for manufacturing is sort of a continuation of a trend. I think there were a lot of investors that jumped on, if you want to call them somewhat slightly improving numbers the month before. But to be fair, I mean, it was still a very sluggish manufacturing industry, and that has not changed. And the coronavirus just throws a further kink in whatever recovery we might have seen. But I think there was so much of an expectation that we would get this trade deal, and all of a sudden we would be off to the races and demand would spike. That hasn't really happened. And I think we're coming to terms with that fact that, first of all, this wasn't necessarily a really drastic slowdown. It was actually worse in 2015 and 2016 when you had the oil price slump. And for manufacturers, it's not clear where the order growth comes from, especially because we're still in an environment of significant uncertainty. First of all, it's not even clear that the trade deal is necessarily set in stone. China's reportedly sought flexibility on some of these purchasing equipments. Now you have the coronavirus. There's the 2020 presidential election. And so for me, I think we're going to be sort of stuck in this sluggish manufacturing environment. I don't know that, it will deteriorate further. The coronavirus being sort of the key variable there. But I think one of the interesting things about that is that unlike the trade war, which predominantly hit the manufacturing sector, the coronavirus could actually have deeper implications for the services side, which I think is what you sort of saw in those numbers coming in today.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting for the companies that you cover, Brooke, the big industrial companies, What's the rhetoric been on the conference calls about the coronavirus? I know it's a recent phenomenon, and every day it seems we learn so much more. But I'm kind of surprised, outside of, say, like an Apple, who we definitely know that they made a big announcement and so on and so forth. I'm not sure I'm hearing it out of industrial America that much.
So you haven't yet, and I think the reason why that is because, well, A, they're not really quite sure. Okay. But for industrial companies, where you're going to see the impact is on the supply chain. And so these factories have been closed now for a number of weeks, but some of that was planned because of the Chinese Lunar New Year. And so now you're getting into the point where some of these facilities are still closed, and you're starting to hear companies come out and say, we're concerned we cannot get parts to our international operations. Now, Deere talked about that today. They said they're going to spend $40 million on expedited freight to make sure that they have availability of their parts in all of their international factories. And so I think one reason why you haven't heard companies talk about this is they're still trying to get their hands on what the supply chain impacts are. Now, most of them have a buffer, but obviously you've got companies like Deere trying to make sure that they protect that. And so that, I think, is going to be the real pain point for manufacturing companies.
All right, well, let's dive into Deere, especially because you said that it's unclear whether the trade deal was even still on the table, given whether China is asking for delays of the implementation of some of the buying agreements. They said that farmer confidence, though still subdued, has improved due to, in part, to hopes for a relaxation of trade tensions and higher agricultural exports. This, according to the CEO, John May. I'm just wondering, does this perhaps look backward looking at this point? I mean, how much are people getting a little overly enthusiastic about Deere's results?
I think you run that risk of being backward looking and overly optimistic. I mean, I think so right now, for the overall global market, they give a forecast on that basis, and they're still calling for flat Asian equipment sales. I feel like that probably has to come down. And in the U.S., I mean, some of these knock-on effects will start to become more apparent in the coming months. But I think it's too early for, the CEO to parse some of that. So it's understandable why he's giving this outlook. But, it's just very unclear, to what degree we're going to see these agricultural purchasing commitments come through. And for the farmers, these are very expensive pieces of equipment. And so you need to feel reasonably confident in the direction of spending, in the direction of the economy to spend that kind of money. And so, look, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. I think a lot of the optimism is more around the fact that it's not getting worse, that we're not seeing a continued deterioration. But I think, again, there's a difference between seeing, recovery and really robust growth and just not getting any worse, but being in sort of this middling, sluggish environment.
Brooke Sutherland, thanks so much for joining us. Brooke Sutherland, Bloomberg opinion columnist, covering all things industrial, getting some lowdown on the Deere earnings. The stock up a little over 8% today, and also kind of get some color on these PMI numbers that we heard this morning, suggesting that the coronavirus is having a negative impact on the U.S. economy, particularly the services economy, as Brooke pointed out. So I agree with you, Lisa, that I'm surprised Deere maybe didn't take a more cautious view looking forward, because you think about the state of the U.S. farmer, you think about the demand that may or may not materialize coming out of China, given what's going on with the coronavirus. So interesting, but they see, I guess, in the markets they focus on, they're seeing decent demand consistent with kind of where they were before, and the stock's reflecting it.
Yeah, and as Mike McGlone said, the cycle in farming has kind of been shifting a little bit too. So there's some fundamental drivers of perhaps a little more price strength, particularly in corn. He's been talking a lot about corn.
Yep, he likes to talk about corn. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Tigger.
All right, Paul, thank you. President Trump says he has 4 candidates in mind to take over the nation's intelligence agencies, and he says he'll have an announcement within a few weeks. President put that out on Twitter moments ago, a day after he told reporters he might name Georgia Congressman Doug Collins as permanent director of national intelligence. Collins took himself out of the running this morning in a Fox Business interview. He said he's focused on running for the Senate in Georgia. All this comes in the wake of multiple reports that the intelligence community briefed the House Intelligence Committee last week about continued Russian efforts to help President Trump in the 2020 election and to disrupt the Democratic primary. The president reportedly complained to then acting DNI Joseph Maguire that the Democrats might use that information against him.
People need to grapple with that a little bit because that is sending a message to the intelligence community that you better be very careful about saying things that I, Donald Trump, don't like.
Democrat Jim Himes sits on the House Intelligence Panel. Asia's coronavirus outbreak may be leveling off somewhat in China, but there are signs it is entering a new phase outside the country. Bloomberg's Rashad Salamat reports from Hong Kong.
South Korean cases, they've soared past 200. They've got Singapore and Japan topping 85. Then don't forget that quarantined cruise ship now, which has got 600 plus people quarantined, though the majority of people have left that now, and most people should have left that ship.
And China's Hubei province at the center of the outbreak has adjusted its infection tally again, adding more than 200 cases to yesterday's count, saying they came from prisons. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports Part.
Discover Cork with Aer Lingus when you fly from London from $55.99 each way as part of a return trip. Experience this vibrant city and head to the coast for authentic Irish seafood and stunning scenery. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black. Fit it with privacy glass. A full leather ebony interior, then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
Pancake day is flipping fun. Pancake day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
for my community.
I am a police officer, and I am a force for all. Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Suffering from house harassment? At Wix, there's 15% off tiles and flooring. So maybe give the downstairs loo a go. Ends Monday. Exclusions apply.
Set for Life is the game from the National Lottery where you can win 10 grand every month for 30 years. So go smash this month, next month, and make every month amazing. Play Set for Life Mondays and Thursdays.
Set for Life from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Prize may be capped. Rules, procedures, and game-specific rules apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Build the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
The B&Q 3 for 2 paint offer is now on. Get an unmissable 3 for 2 on coloured emulsions such as Dulux, Farrow & Ball and Valspar. This show-stopping deal ends Monday, so hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Excludes white and ready mixed trade. Every third item per single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends 24th of February. See DIY.com.
Good morning. This is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway. We're with you.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
It's 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks fall as cases of coronavirus swelled in South Korea. More companies warned investors about a hit to their profits and revenue. The renewed anxiety over the global spread of the virus also pushed stocks lower and knocked them off record highs of what's been a volatile holiday-shortened week. Tech companies are leading the losses. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.9%, down 31. The Dow has come back just a bit. It's down 0.8% now, down 245. And the NASDAQ is down 1.3%, down 128. 10-year is up 15.30 seconds. The yield 1.46%. The West Texas Intermediate crude is down nearly 2% now at 52.83 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1.6% at 16.46 even per ounce. The dollar yen, the 111.71. The euro, $1.0863. And the British pound, the $1.29.67. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, Munis in Focus.
Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. Will you get paid if an earthquake puts your municipal bond investment on shaky ground? Yes, AA guaranteed. BAM Municipal Bond Insurance protects against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Well, the story today clearly is the PMI data that came out. We're looking at the Treasury market. The yield on the 30-year Treasury bond dropped to an all-time low as weak manufacturing data in the U.S. stoke concerns about the global economic fallout from the coronavirus. What does it mean for the municipal bond market? Eric Kazatsky, municipal strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joins us here on our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers 1130 studio. So, Eric, again, give us a sense of what's been happening in your market, the municipal bond market. What does a day like today do for investors in your market?
I think that they're excited, confused, and scared all at the same time. Excited because obviously the lower rates get, the better returns are going to be. And I think by all stretch of the imagination, no one really priced in from a return standpoint what's happening right now with rates and how the virus is impacting global growth. So I think from that standpoint, everybody's really happy. They could take a pause right now and just really bank those nice returns for the rest of the year. But I think the bigger concern for the market is trying to figure out, as reinvestment money comes back to bondholders, they're reinvesting into a much lower rate environment, and really how to navigate that market and where to best allocate dollars.
So let's take a deeper look into the $3.8 trillion municipal bond market as far as its composition. We hear more about international investors getting into this market, yet it still is dominated by people looking for a tax cut, right?
Absolutely. We did a study this week that sort of broke down the numbers from the Fed and SIFMA and looked at who the holders were in the marketplace. And 46% of the market is still considered, quote unquote, individuals. Now, a portion of that obviously is going into separately managed account space, but it's still a lot of mom and pop investors. You mentioned international buyers coming into the space, and on a cross-currency basis, munis still look very attractive. And I think that's why you're seeing some of the ancillary flows come in.
Talk to us about which is a new concept for me that I just kind of became aware of recently, which is a taxable municipal bond market. I've been a municipal bond investor for over 25 years, and it was, for me, it's the tax treatment that is the attraction plus. So talk to me about the taxable municipal bond market. Who's the issuer? Who's the investor? How big is that market?
So who's the issuer, who the investor is really a mixed bag right now, because it's really been turned on its head. In 2010, when you had the Build America bond program, that's really when taxable munis came to the forefront and got on everybody's radar. And it's the market, has been there, but it's sort of middled along up until this year. In the fall, when 10-year U.S. Treasury rates, hit their lows, that's when really the fireworks were set off for the taxable muni market. And it's really a combination of a couple factors. One, low absolute rates in treasuries. Two, constant demand coming into the municipal space. And three, the inability of municipal issuers to actually do advance refundings. So for them, this is a way to sort of get around the tax laws and the implications that came with tax reform, and a way for them to eke out savings. So another benefit of taxable munis for the issuers is the fact that they're not constrained by use of proceeds. So they can not only refund their debt, take money out of the market and get savings, but they're also unconstrained in how they want to spend new money. So it's really a double benefit for them.
As people focus more on the relative valuation case of the muni market, I'm wondering about the credit quality side of things and whether there is an increasing risk there that's growing as more local governments can borrow for whatever they want, or basically whether we haven't really seen a major default for a very long time and that will just continue so people can keep piling in.
I think local credit and muni credit in general is still very strong, high AA credit quality. And I actually just got a report from Moody's before I came downstairs that said for the fifth year running, there's been more net upgrades than downgrades in the municipal sector. I think obviously the biggest concern is if you have an economic slowdown, how that's really going to affect these local municipalities. But I think that they're in a much better shape before the Great Recession than they are now, that they're in a better shape now than they were before in the Great Recession. They've trimmed down staff, they've bulked up their reserves. So I think that if we see a meaningful slowdown, they're in a much better place.
So give us a sense of where we are in the new issue market. I would think there would be a rush to the market given where rates are. Yeah. So give us a sense of where that is. Are they just refinancing existing stuff, or municipalities going out and building roads and tunnels and stuff?
So we have seen an uptick in issuance. It hasn't been as large as you would think because there's sort of still a pushback from local borrowers to really get levered up. And I think a lot of that has to do with constraints from individual taxpayers on what they can deduct on their state and local taxes. Before it was just a pass through and you could sort of subsidize everything. Now, not so much. And just a quick anecdote, I'm on the local school board in my district and we're trying to build a new high school. And even though it's not going to cost the taxpayers anything because we over budget our debt service, there's still a general pushback like, hey, we don't want to borrow anything. That's really not the appetite for right now.
So what's your pet project that you're lobbying for other than that? I know what Paul's is. He wants the tunnel.
I want the tunnel, the Gateway Tunnel. And I want the salt tax removed. Those are my two items.
I think removal of the salt tax would be a good thing. Look, it's interesting. We get that question a lot, as the president's talking about tax cuts 2.0, what that might entail. And for me, I think the biggest thing that could be done would be sort of that doubling of the salt cap to 20,000 would be a big help as far as, taking some of the pressure off for taxpayers.
Maybe in certainly coastal states.
Exactly.
But this is really a juggernaut for Democratic candidates. We've heard from them as far as such a hot topic because a lot of the areas that are disproportionately affected and the people who are disproportionately affected are higher income Americans. So it's sort of a political hot potato right now. Thank you so much, Eric Kozaski, for being with us. Eric Kozaski is a municipal bond strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios. Interesting to see the sort of push-pull within the muni market of this fear that the low rates won't lead to very big returns going forward, and yet they keep going lower, and it doesn't seem like there are that many credit issues on the horizon, so why not, right? That's sort of the story around markets, frankly.
Yeah, and then you have that the new taxable market bringing in some of those international buyers, so there's even more demand pushing rates even lower. The 30-year bond right now, 1.915% off of its low of the day, 1.88%.
Indeed. Coming up, we're going to talk more about the market action and also some of the consolidation that we're expecting to see in the banking industry. I'm Lisa Abramowitz with Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Technology is leading a pullback for stocks of about 1 to 1.33%. Investors are gauging the economic impact as the coronavirus spreads beyond China. Right now, the Dow is falling 241, the Nasdaq 123, the S&P 30. Home builders have another reason to keep breaking ground. While sales of pre-owned homes did fall last month, it wasn't because of lack of demand, but a lack of homes available for sale. And while there was a drop, it was from December's 2-year high. Xerox is refusing to give up. It's vowing to keep pushing to take over computer maker HP, even as that company has adopted a plan that would make the takeover more difficult to carry out. If a person or group gets 20% or more of HP stock, the plan would let other shareholders boost their voting power and dividends too. And you won't run out of Baby Yodas. Hasbro has extended its licensing agreement with Disney to produce Star Wars and Marvel toys. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep the top
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA.
Your capital is at risk. Tax rules may change. Full terms for our stocks and shares ISA are available on our website. 18 plus UK residents.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. And the freedom to pay more whenever you want, or even take a break if you like. Because no one can really predict what the future holds. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000, subject to status, UK residents only, over 21. Based on de facto data January 2020. Up to 2 repayment holidays a year subject to approval.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Boy, it was a big week for M&A in the financial services industry. Coming up, we'll break down the Morgan Stanley deal. Also, we're going to get the latest on the coronavirus. More evidence that it's having an impact on global GDP. We'll break that down. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
And Paul, that evidence you're talking about is leading investors to sell. Stocks are down, gold is up, treasury yields are down. Investors are taking that defensive stance amid the renewed concerns about the economic impact of the coronavirus. Piers Hillier, the Royal London Asset Management CIO, says the coronavirus effect is particularly hard on the supply chain.
Something like this makes companies think about, again, is how much can we actually source locally just in case this kind of scenario arises again. We've very much reduced our domestic production to support and driven by just in time. And I think that's the structural bit that we'll come to have a look at. Immediately, we're not seeing a significant impact, but the auto sector is certainly seeing that. Obviously, drop-off in China has been an obvious one in terms of auto demand.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.8% now, a bit of a comeback, down 26. The Dow is down 0.6%, down 187. And the Nasdaq is down 1.1%, down 110. The 10-year is up 12.30 seconds. The yield is 1.47%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.3% at 53.18 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.4% at 16.4330 an ounce. The dollar yen 111.72. The euro's $1.854, and the British pound $1.2964. Business activity in the U.S. shrank for the month of February for the first time since 2013. They're blaming the coronavirus and the supply chain hit that made firms hesitant to place orders. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Morgan Stanley shares having their worst two-day drop since May of 2018 after saying that they were going to buy E-Trade Financial for $13 billion. And yet the enthusiasm of James Gorman, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, is hard to miss. And frankly, a lot of his peers on Wall Street looking at doing similar types of deals. This is sort of a conundrum, and we're going to parse through this. Leanne Nguyen is joining us here, a finance reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our interactive broker studios. Leanne, can you give us a sense of why Wall Street views this as such a provocative and positive deal, even though you see that traders perhaps are a little less enthused?
Well, I think Wall Street likes the deal because they've been talking about doing deals for years now. So a lot of the commentators that we've been speaking to have said, look, it's the time is right. Banks are flush with cash, and a lot of financial firms are flush with cash and need to grow, need to consolidate and have scale. And so this deal has been seen as one of those growth plays to consolidate and have bigger scale. The market, however, I think is looking at that price tag and going, that's pretty high. It's a 30% premium.
Right. So now we saw another deal recently with Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade. Mm-hmm. So there's a trend here, I'm going to call it. But a trend going for some of these discount brokers. But I see that business, as Lisa was suggesting, under tremendous fee pressure. So where's the growth coming? I'm not really sure I see the industrial logic for Morgan Stanley, other than they're going to pick up, $300 or $400 billion of deposits and assets.
Well, two's a trend, as many journalists say. Right. I'm looking for a trend.
Usually it's three, but we
I know,
exactly. We can go down
exactly. But I think the point is the deposits, right? That's a big part of this strategy. The fact that Morgan Stanley wants more mass market retail customers. A lot of its competitors, for instance, Bank of America, JP Morgan, have a much broader client suite. So they go all the way from the ultra high net worth all the way down to Main Street, whereas Morgan Stanley was seen as much more of this kind of, ultra high or wealthy person's play. And so they've now been able to access Main Street as a result of this deal.
Is Main Street profitable for banks?
They like to say it is, because if, you or I go into, Bank of America, we could do our consumer banking there. We could get a mortgage, an auto loan, etc.
They do all those things.
They bank on us having the entire, cross-selling, basically. And what this is going to allow Morgan Stanley to do is cross-sell, but I'm not sure. Again, that's still an open question whether they can make a lot of money off that cross-selling.
There's been talk in the marketplace that maybe Goldman was in the market for this deal as well, and that maybe got into a little bidding war, and that might be reflected in the relatively high valuation. What do you hear about Goldman and their intentions in this market?
Well, we heard from people familiar that Goldman passed on E-Trade, and yes, the question now remains, what can Goldman buy and what can other firms buy if they're looking to grow? The experts we spoke to said that there's still plenty of room to buy more wealth managers and registered investment advisors, so that could be an area for growth. A lot of the payments companies are pretty active right now. And let's not forget insurance. Insurance companies are also pretty active and looking for deals too.
Lennon, taking a step back, for a long time, people were saying that banks are going to be broken up. They're going to shrink as a result of the 2008 financial crisis. And for a long time, there was this aversion to a huge deal like this. This is the biggest deal since the financial crisis. Does this mark a shift in attitudes toward more consolidation and even bigger banks going forward, just given the fact that the whole landscape of the financial world is changing?
Yes, I think it does mark a cultural shift, because we always saw Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs as these kind of Wall Street investment bank type firms that are big in trading, and now it looks like they're trying to get into